Call the regular meeting of the Oregon City Commission to order for Wednesday, March 2nd, 2016. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Pauly? Here. Commissioner Mengelberg? Here. Mayor Holliday?
Here. If you'll please stand and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You laugh at me, Smith. No, I just stopped talking all of a sudden. I don't know what the hell. So under ceremonies and proclamations, we have two things. First, you want to do... Okay, so we're going to do the oath of office for Oregon City Police Department for Officer Michael Blakely and Officer Daniel Garrett. So if you two gentlemen will come forward, I'll dig through my stuff, see if I can find what you're supposed to say. Here we go. Got a mic for me? Yep. Okay. So if you will raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Michael Blakely,
do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law.
do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law
And support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon.
and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon.
I will abide by the law enforcement code of ethics
I will abide by the law enforcement code of ethics
and the department's rules and regulations
and the department's rules and regulations
while faithfully performing my duties as police officer for Oregon City.
while faithfully performing your duties as police officer for Oregon City, Oregon.
Congratulations. So one of these is yours, right, Jimmy? Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Okay, so second up, apparently we have a group of Girl Scouts in the house. Well, the folks from Girl Scout Troop 45064. You want to come up? 1, 2, 3, 4.
The whole troop's here.
So if you're speaking, please tell us your name.
My name's Lucy from Troop 45064, and we are having a party in the park at La Tourette Tennis Courts. And we're throwing this party because we want to create awareness about this park, and if we get enough input, then maybe we can create an actual park. We're going to have different booths there, and I'm going to help with the activities booth where the kids that come can do activities.
I'm Stella, and I will be helping out with the input booth of how we're going to get people's opinions on what they would like for the park. We're going to have a dot exercise, and a drawing exercise. We're also going to have a raffle there. We're raffling off some blankets, a t-shirt, and yeah.
I'm Ella. I am working with my partner Taryn. We're working on the history and future booth. My partner will be talking about the history of the park and what it used to be and what all the information like that. And I will be working on the future and what we want in the park and what we want to see in the park. So we want to invite you guys to our party, and we hope that we can get enough people to create awareness so we can maybe create a park in this tennis court.
So let me ask you a question. Where exactly is Ladderette Park?
It is at the corner of 11th Street and Madison in Oregon City.
Okay, thank you.
Can you say the time and date one more time?
Yes.
Oh, it's from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. and it's on Sunday, March 13th.
And will there be cookies there?
Yes, we are actually. There's going to be free food, and we're having a cookie walk, just like a cake walk.
Oh,
You should bring a pie for Commissioner Shaw.
yeah, really.
Miss Ricks, will you put that on our calendars? Thank you.
Thank you, girls. You did a very good job. I was a Girl Scout myself.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah, come by and see us again.
So,
If you'd like to leave some back, you can hand them out at the end.
So just for you guys, the high school track and field event has been, the guy's not going to come, so we're not going to have him. And now we have the annual update from the Oregon City Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Holbeck. Oh,
And-
Derek, you're on my list, so.
And Derek.
Can you hear me okay?
I don't know.
Not really.
Is your mic on there, Amber?
Your mic's on.
Okay.
All right,
Technical
we're good.
difficulties, please stand.
There we go. Oh, you have to.
All right.
Is that working? Okay. All right, go ahead.
All right. Mayor Holliday and City Commissioners, thank you for allowing us to be with you this evening to share an update about your very vibrant Oregon City Chamber of Commerce. We have been serving the community of Oregon City since 1909. So we're not just a recent addition to the community. And we are open to any person, association, corporation, or partnership who shares similar objectives with the Oregon City Chamber. Quite recently, we updated our mission statement to really reflect, I think, a stronger role in our community. And that is as follows: working together to build a vibrant economy and enhance the quality of life for the Oregon City community. And furthermore, we're guided by particular principles or competencies. And in this case, building a strong economy for Oregon City, connecting and educating businesses and customers, promoting Oregon City, and advocating on behalf of business with government. And with that, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you the 2016 Chair of the Oregon City Chamber Board of Directors, Mr. Derek Metzen.
Thank you, Amber.
Welcome, Derek.
Derek.
So I have the pleasure of serving with a number of folks on the board. We are comprised of approximately 300 businesses in Oregon City and around the surrounding area, but we've got 15 voting members and 18 total on our board. And those of you who are here tonight, would you raise your hand? What a good showing. Thank you. And Tony Conkle joins us as well. So, exhaustive list there. We have 3 staff. Amber Holbeck, who's been on staff with the Chamber for 10.5 years, obviously well embedded in the Oregon City community. Sandy, who's been with us for 2.5 years, and Jennifer, who's been with us for about 8 months. This past year, as every year, we have a board retreat, and we crafted a vision for the direction of the Chamber and where we're going. This is consolidated around 5 key areas of growth and and concentration within the Oregon City community. First of all, we want to see it be a regional destination. Oregon City has a really unique and vibrant node that people recognize. It's not just a regular suburb or outskirt place in Oregon City, and so we work to promote that. Workforce and entrepreneurial development. We live in a capitalistic society, and we want our youngest generation to know that they have opportunities here, that they can grow, and with a little initiative, they can do fantastic things. So we partner with the high school. Larry Didway also sits on our board, and are glad to work with them in that way. Collaborative community, through our partnership with you, through the State of City, State of the Schools, and candidate forums through election years, we not only educate the business community, but the Oregon City community and citizens in general. In Catalytic developments, there are a lot of awesome things going on in Oregon City. I don't need to tell you about those, but we have particular interests, such as the Riverwalk, the Cove, 10th and Main, all those awesome things. I could say Blue Herring, but I think that's a little bit farther out. That catalytic development is those things that are going to spur those larger, those more interesting things that will have a really dramatic impact. And I'll say Beaver Creek is one of those as well. That is coming up very shortly. And then a model chamber. Amber gets contacted very often from other chambers throughout the state asking how we do it. And I think the folks involved in our chamber have a real loyalty to the businesses here, to the people, to the citizens, and there's a lot going on. Good Morning Oregon City, I've seen several of you folks there. I've seen several of the folks in this room here. We're at that event and other events, and at our annual dinner, so thank you for your support in that way. And with that, I'll hand it back to Amber.
Thank you, Derek. You know, I don't want to, those are all great ideas, but we do have a responsibility, we as the chamber, rather than just looking at it as great words and a great looking plan, we actually have to put, you know, some action behind those places, behind those topics, behind those items. And so that will be a piece that hopefully you all will be, that we will be playing roles together to get those things achieved. So the City Walk, Oregon City or OC City Walk. This is something brand new, and we are inviting you to be part of it May 3rd and 5th. The objective is to create small groups or pairs of people who really care about business success in Oregon City. We'd set up about a 4 to 6 block area with these pairs or small groups going out together, visiting with the business owners and managers to really learn what's working, what's not, how can we all help, how can we benefit each other and do a better job in what, well, actually make them all successful. Truly, that's what it's about. Who's going to participate? Well, certainly chamber leadership, our board members, committee members, our staff, other folks who really believe in things like Buy Local Oregon City, and of course, you hopefully. So we're looking for city staff and commissioners, folks at the county level, folks from the college. We'd love to see folks from the hospital, etc. You can just kind of start to see what kind of great combinations of folks we can put if we have someone from a small business matched with, say, city government, and those folks go out and pair together. What kind of great conversations could we get going here for Oregon City? So what our staff will be doing is creating a citywide walk plan. Hopefully it'll be easy to walk and visit and easy to achieve those goals. We already have a committed sponsor, Comcast Business, and with that, I'm hoping that you all will be gung-ho to be part of that experiment and experience, and want to make sure that you're aware of some upcoming events. State of Our Schools Luncheon, Tuesday, March 15th. It'll be at River Shore Banquet Room, featuring Clackamas Community College President Joanne Truesdell and Oregon City School District Superintendent Larry Didway. We've got the City Walk we just talked about, our golf tournament, Friday, June 24th, and then last but certainly not least, our brand new Oregon City Metric Century Make It or Break It cycling event, Sunday, August 21st.
And don't go over that too fast. I want to see each of you there in bicycle shorts, especially you, Dan. And I'd like to see you go 50 miles. Let's see it.
Dan's rule number one, I don't write anything that doesn't have a key to shut it off.
And for those who can't, who aren't ready for the metric century, we do have a 30-mile option and a family fun ride. which is 5 miles.
I'll do the family fun ride. I'll have my husband do the metric century.
Great plan.
Awesome.
Great
I'll drive the
plan.
support van.
That'll work too. So of course, we would ask, do you have any questions? And reach us at our website, but more than anything, just thank you. We're so pleased that we have such a strong partnership with the City of Oregon City and with you folks as the leaders of this community. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you for all the work that you guys do, Amber.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you.
And I'll forgive you
Amber
for the
and
Donald
Derek.
Trump comment, Derek.
What was that?
And since I have the floor, I support both projects that'll be in the hearing later on. Speaking for me personally.
Thank you for your input.
Slid that in there. So I'm going to make a couple of adjustments to the agenda. Apparently we moved another presentation to the presentation thing, and I didn't see it until I got to page 3. So we're going to do that next, and then we're going to take 6D and 6E before we do citizen comments. So we can get those out of the way. A couple of housekeeping things that we really need to get done. This meeting tonight's going to be fairly long. So we want to get those things out of the way because we really need to have them done. So with that, Mr. Conkle, will you come up, please? Right now we've already done it. We already have an official vote. We're just going to do it again to add everybody else. So if you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Anthony J. Conkle III,
I, Anthony J. Conkle III,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the State of Oregon,
and of the State of Oregon,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
faithfully perform the duties of City Manager of Oregon City
faithfully perform the duties of City Manager of Oregon City
during my incumbency thereof.
during my incumbency thereof.
Congratulations, Tony. We're glad to have you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Not going to give us a speech?
No speech.
Would you like one?
Come on. Yes.
Well, I just want to do, I've said this to the commission before. I am just so thankful for the opportunity and humbled. I'm so excited to be able to continue with the work that I've been doing in Oregon City and expanding that and taking on a leadership role, working with the commission, working with many citizens that I've had the pleasure to work with over the last almost 15 years. Excited for the opportunity to continue to work with our Planning Commission, our Historic Review Board, our Citizen Involvement Committee, our neighborhood associations. So once again, I'm just really excited. We've got an excellent staff from the top down, and I just couldn't be more privileged and thankful for the opportunity. So I will do my best for the community. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to move right along. Item 6D is 16-105, first and second reading of ordinance number 16-1005, extending an existing moratorium on land development, building and sewer permit approvals in certain areas within Oregon City due to a lack of sanitary sewer system capacity for a third time. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor and City Commissioners. So, yeah, we've had this conversation before. This is the third time we're having this conversation. While that feels like not great news, I think there's good news in this particular decision in that we have completed about 50% of our project areas, and just recently here we completed the work on 13th, Madison, 14th, Division Street. So that's the area kind of downstream of the hospital, which was a big area. It's an area in the McLaughlin neighborhood. It's an important area, and just needed to be fixed. So in the priority we originally set, we've been moving through that list, and those projects are complete, or that project is complete with the exception of paving. We still got some paving work to do, but permits can be issued and construction can continue, and the moratorium is essentially lifted in that area. We've also hired a consultant to start on the next project, which is the Lynn Avenue project. So that design phase is from February to April or May, and then we expect to be under construction on that particular part of the city in the summer. So good things moving forward, and just based on the way the law is written about moratoriums, they definitely expect the agency to stay on track, and one of the ways of doing that is coming back and checking in every 6 months. We have basically a 4-year implementation plan that we propose to the City Commission for all these projects. If things stay on track, we'll be completing those early. But we're just moving through these as the funding comes in. We're spending it on these projects, and we're staying within the original allocation that was intended, and so that's good news as well. So while we're asking you to extend the moratorium, we're only extending it in the area that is yet to be completed. And the other thing I'll say is those areas where there is moratorium still in place, staff is continuing to work with the property owners that want to do some development in there to give them information on that, allow their land use applications to move forward, just recognizing that they really can't build until we complete the project. So that's what this is about, and we're asking you to hopefully unanimously approve the first reading, and if that happens, then we can go to the second reading, and that will move us through that one more step in the moratorium process.
Questions? Motion?
How many areas were there? Weren't there 4 areas, John, that were that needed?
Basically 4 areas.
Yeah,
yes.
and you got 2 of them done.
Yes.
And Lynn Avenue's the one that you're doing the study on now, and then where's the other one? Is that up on Holmes? Is that
So the 4th project is in the Hazelwood neighborhood, so it's more of the South End neighborhood, and some of the Rivercrest neighborhood. So it's all residential area. That particular area is mostly built out. There's a couple of parcels that have potential for development or redevelopment, but we originally intended for that to be the 4th project, and that's where we're at with that.
Okay.
Motion for first reading.
I'm in the first reading of number 161005.
Ms. Richter?
An ordinance extending an existing.
Second.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
I'll second that.
Moved by Commissioner Pauly, seconded by Commissioner Smith. Ms. Richter?
Let me start again. Ordinance number 16-1005, an ordinance extending an existing moratorium on land development, building, and sewer permit approvals in certain areas within the city of Oregon City due to a lack of sanitary sewer system capacity for a 3rd time for an additional 6 months, and lifting the moratorium for 12th Street Northeast, 12th Street Southwest, and 12th Street, 13th Street, Division Street.
Discussion? Call roll.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Pauly?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. So I would entertain a motion for the second reading and final adoption of 16-1005.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Mengelberg, seconded by Commissioner Smith. Ms. Richter?
Ordinance number 16-1005, an ordinance extending an existing moratorium on land development, building, and sewer permit approvals in certain areas within the city of Oregon City due to a lack of sanitary sewer system capacity for a 3rd time for an additional 6 months, and lifting the moratorium for 12th Street Northeast, 12th Street Southwest, and 12th Street, 13th Street, Division Street.
Call roll.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Pauly?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. Okay, moving along, 16-102, Resolution 16-01, modifying the building division's fee schedule to provide a complete list of division fees. Mr. Conkle.
Thank you, Mayor. Evening, Commissioners. I'll call up Mike Roberts, the building official, to give the presentation on the building fees. We did bring this forward in a work session and walk you through that, but we will provide an additional staff report now and answer any questions that you may have.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Mike Roberts, building official for the city. We've done a research of our fees and found out they were extremely low. So we, as we talked about in the work session, went to 10 other jurisdictions to kind of find out what the average fees were. And we've come back presented them in the work session, January 12th. We have taken this to our stakeholders group that we started in March of 2015. They've passed it January 7th and February 2nd. And we took it to Building Codes Division, and they have approved it to move forward.
I have a question. Can you remind us who is in your stakeholders group? What type of people?
We have builders that build here in Oregon City. We have developers, 2 architects, an engineer, and then city staff. And we also have a member from the CIC.
Okay, so they felt the increases were reasonable?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Motion?
Move to approve 1601, modifying building division fee schedule.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Shaw, second by Commissioner Smith. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Polly?
Aye.
Commissioner Mangelberg? Aye. Mayor Holliday?
Aye. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're back on track. So we have citizen comments. Citizens are allowed up to 3 minutes to present information relevant to the city but not listed as an item on the agenda. So with that, I think I only have one, Mr. O'Brien.
Good evening.
Tom O'Brien, Oregon City resident. Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening, Tom.
In January of 2015, the Commission established a number of goals. Goal 4 reads, seek opportunities to maintain communications with citizens and facilitate citizen participation. The mayor has shown from the beginning of his administration that he has no interest in achieving Goal 4. I will cite one glaring example. Prior to your last meeting, a concerned citizen contacted one of the city planners to alert them to the fact that the city was about to act illegally regarding a land use action. The mayor was notified that the agenda item would need to be delayed until the next commission meeting.
Excuse me.
The mayor's response indicates he is not interested in citizen
Mr.
communications.
O'Brien, can you hold on a second? Because the attorney has something. I think she
Is
needs
this
to say.
a non-agenda item that you're
This is a
raising?
non-agenda item, yes.
It sounds like it's related to an issue that's on the agenda tonight.
It is not.
Okay.
Excuse the interruption. Instead, his actions demonstrate that he would prefer to act illegally rather than accept ideas or information from a citizen. Expressing his irritation, the mayor proceeded to use the forum offered by public television to vocalize abusive and derogatory remarks about the citizen who had been helpful in notifying the city that they were about to violate the law. I believe the remarks were not only inappropriate.
Excuse me again. This is related to a land use matter.
This is
That
related,
the mayor,
this is related to communication and Goal 4, strictly and purely. I believe the remarks were not only inappropriate, but believe the mayor should have thanked the individual for alerting the city to a problem. I was extremely disappointed that Commissioners Pauly and Smith did not reprimand the mayor for his comments. The commissioners are each elected by the citizens and are expected to conduct themselves with proper decorum. When one of them is out of line, the others should immediately let that individual know their actions are inappropriate. Commissioners, since the mayor has established a precedent without being challenged by his peers, what would your reaction be if a member of the public came before this chamber expressing an opinion that the mayor is an incompetent alcoholic bully? Commissioners, I hope you will ask yourselves if that is the kind of communication and participation that you believed to be important when you established your Goal 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Is there anybody else for citizen comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the public hearings. First up is 6A, 16-103, Historic Properties LLC, zone change 15-03, zone change, and I don't know what the PZ is, PZ 15-01, comprehensive plan amendment for property located near Beaver Creek Road, Highway 213, and Maple Lane Road. Ms. Richter?
Yes, I will read the script that goes along with these land use hearings so you all can rest your eyes for a minute or two. On February 17, 2016, the City Commission opened the hearing on the historic properties applications for a comprehensive plan amendment and zone change. The hearing was then continued to this evening. A staff report has been prepared and made available to the public 7 days before tonight's hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to the applicant's proposals. Staff has analyzed the criteria along with comments and input received through the public notification process. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. Hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart right there. The Planning Commission has recommended approval of these applications, and the matter is now before the City Commission for final consideration. As such, the City Commission's review is on the record, and only issues raised before the Planning Commission may be raised. Any new issues and new evidence will be rejected and not considered. Anyone who wishes to speak in this appeal should fill out a speaker's card and give it to planning staff. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name. Testimony should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. Given that the record is limited to the issues raised before the Planning Commission, it would be very helpful if you identified the circumstances that surrounded the presentation of these issues before the Planning Commission. A person may submit any written material while the public record is open. Any written material mailed to city staff during the time period when the record is open that does not contain new evidence will be placed in the record. Written material submitted during the public hearing must be presented to city staff in order to be considered by the City Commission to become part of the record. This includes PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, and other exhibits. If the City Commission makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you wish to appeal must have been raised for the Commission's consideration. Without raising the issue in the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the City and all parties can respond, the issue will not be judged appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, Oregon Revised Statute 197796 requires us to announce the following. The failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issues precludes an action for damages in circuit court. At this point, I'm going to ask the Commission if they have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statements to declare.
No.
No.
Has any commissioner visited the site since the last Commission meeting?
No.
No.
Does any member of the public wish to challenge any decision maker regarding their disclosures or their participation on this matter?
Yes.
Come forward, please.
I have several bias challenges, and I'd like to ask the city attorney first if, in undertaking a bias challenge, I'm limited to 3 minutes.
I think that is up to the decision of the City Commission.
Okay. I would like to request 5 minutes for my testimony.
I'm fine with 5.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Honorable Commission, in the seminal case of Fasano versus Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, the Supreme Court held in 1973 that everybody in a quasi-judicial land use hearing has the right, certain procedural rights during a land use hearing. One of those rights is that of an impartial tribunal. In holdings, in setting forth its holdings, the Supreme Court said, and I quote, "Having weighed the dangers of making desirable change more difficult against the dangers of almost irresistible pressures that can be asserted by private economic interests on local government, we believe the latter dangers are more to be feared." bias can be conflict of interest, it can be personal bias against either the applicant or one of the parties speaking at a quasi-judicial land use hearing. So I would like to go through my bias challenges. The first one is to Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Smith voted to sell the applicant, Historic Properties, a parcel of land that's in the curve of Maple Lane Road that the city had obtained at no cost from the Oregon Department of Transportation. In addition, Commissioner Smith is also a school board employee. The school board...
District employee.
School district, I'm sorry. School district employee. And the school district has skin in this game. They sold the bus barn, as it's popularly known to the applicant, Historic Properties. It appears as well that they have made a loan of approximately $1.5 million to the applicant, Historic Properties, and recorded a trust deed 2014-060958. My next bias challenge is Commissioner Pauly, for the same reason I challenged Commissioner Smith, having sold at a no-bid sale a parcel of land in this subject property area. Commissioner Pauly was also endorsed by the Oregon City Business Alliance, an organization which one of the applicant's members, Mr. Fowler, is a member, and the address for what the OCBA is 1300 John Adams, which is the exact same address of the applicant, Historic Properties. My next challenge is to Commissioner Shaw. Commissioner Shaw is a longtime friend of the one of the members, the applicant, Historic Properties co-manager Dan Fowler. Mr. Fowler was a member of Commissioner Shaw's 2014 campaign committee, according to the Secretary of State's website. When Mr. Fowler first ran for mayor in 1990, Commissioner Shaw, then Mr. Shaw, wrote a letter in support of Mr. Fowler's mayoral candidacy and indicated that he knew Mr. Fowler both on committees and professionally through his construction company. I think Commissioner Shaw should disclose whether he has a financial relationship historically and currently with either Mr. Fowler or Historic Properties, Inc. Mr. Holliday, Mr. Mayor Holliday, was endorsed and had a financial contribution from Mr. Fowler. Mr. Holliday thanked Mr. Fowler as a friend when he was sworn into office on his first day. So he has pro-Fowler and pro-Historic Properties bias. He was endorsed by the OCBA. He has intense negative bias towards me, a party in this proceeding, as evidenced by his eruption at the first hearing on this land use matter, when I made a presentation in 2014 to the CIC, in which he came and disrupted that meeting and made several false statements, one of which was he was corrected by Mayor Neely. And he also announced the recall against me in front of me from this table in open commission session when I was commissioner, and read a letter from Mr. Parker. I will also mention that Commissioner Shaw circulated, I think, 3 sheets of recall petitions against me as well, so he has intense negative bias towards me as well. So I have 20 seconds left. Substantial evidence in the record. I'm going to be submitting this to the city recorder. I have an affidavit and exhibits. One comment on, I have 10 seconds. This doesn't qualify to be MUC because you have to have convenient transit along it. This one, MUC,
Sorry, what does this have to do with bias?
Huh?
What does this have to do with
Well,
bias?
I didn't know if I had 3 minutes or not. If I get 3 minutes to talk about the substance of the application after the bias challenge is determined, I will
get 3
take
minutes.
advantage.
You will get 3 minutes as a member
All
of the
right.
public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's quite a handful.
Anybody else?
Seeing none. So, you want to
Walk through
you
these?
want to enlighten us, Ms. Richter?
Yes, we'll walk through these. Let's start with Commissioner Smith. Can you you sold land to the applicant?
I think this has to do with the right of way, the road right of way.
The school board sold the land, yes.
No, not. He's not talking about the land that the school district sold. He's talking about the right of way for the easement for the roadway.
It was
Do you have any interest in the subject property right now?
No.
Do you stand to gain financially
No.
in the outcome of this decision? Do you believe that you are going to be able to evaluate the evidence and review the testimony and make a decision based on the materials that are submitted in the record?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Pauly. The allegation is that you sold a piece of land in the subject property and that you were endorsed by the Oregon City Business Alliance. Do you have any fiscal interest in the subject property?
No. That was a commission decision. The easement is not personal property.
Okay. Do you stand to gain financially by the outcome of this decision in any way?
No.
What is the connection with the Oregon City Business Alliance to this application?
None.
Do you believe that you can make a decision based on the evidence and testimony submitted and evaluated against the criteria?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shaw, you are a longtime friend of the applicant, a member of the campaign committee, and the allegation is that you have a financial relationship with the applicant. Just so you know, being friends with people is part of a commissioner's job. You are a member of the public. You are out in the public. You are allowed to have friends. Take note. Contributing to a campaign contribution to a campaign is something that all politicians are subject to, and that alone does not make you biased. In fact, there's a pretty important Oregon LNG case, Clatsop County, I think, where a commissioner took money from the LNG company and actually campaigned in opposition to the Oregon LNG project as that person was running, and then heard an application for that pipeline. And there was a bias challenge in that case. And what Luba said was, what you do outside in the public political realm is what you are supposed to do. But when you step into this room and you are reviewing an application, you have an obligation to review it against the approval criteria. And so you wear two hats in that way. And that does not make you biased. So, Commissioner Shaw, do you believe you can make a decision based on the evidence and argument presented and uphold the ordinances of the city?
Yes, I can.
Okay, Mayor Holliday. Same goes for you. You have the allegation is that you have personal animus against particular people. Again, that personal animus, is that going to make it impossible for you to evaluate the applicable approval criteria, apply the evidence as it is presented, and make a decision based on the Oregon City Code and state law?
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right, I think we're ready to move on. Staff report.
All right.
Are we going to have to do that whole thing again on the next one?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
The good news is we don't have to do it for the Beaver Creek Concept Plan.
Who's taking this? Ms. Turway.
Thank you very much. So as Carrie identified previously, this hearing is on the record. The issues brought up before the City Commission are limited to those brought before the County Commission, so no new evidence is allowed. At this point, I did want to identify some testimony that was submitted to the city since our last hearing.
Is that what's in front of us here?
So there is a packet in front of you. Also, there was an email that was sent to me at 5 p.m. Staff is working on printing it, providing it to you. I can just go over the content of that email. So in the packet provided for you, and there's a copy in the back as well, there is a summary of what is provided within that testimony. A majority of this testimony provides new evidence, so it's up to the commission if you would like to accept this testimony or not.
Can you hear me now? All right. So it's up to the commission if you would like to accept this testimony. For the other testimony that we're working on printing, that was sent at 5 p.m. today, was from Ms. Christine Kaczynski, a request that the City Commission keep the record open. It identifies concerns regarding compliance with Goal 12 of our comprehensive plan and statewide goals, which are transportation. Also concerns regarding landslides and concerns that all state goals have not been addressed. Most of that testimony within that writing was provided in previous commission hearings and is within the record. There's a couple of parts regarding trip counts that are not in the record. You'll be provided that as soon as it's printed in a few minutes.
With your report, and they'll take a look at it, and then we'll move on.
All right.
And
so
then they can make a decision on the record, and then we'll move on with the hearing, if that's okay.
I apologize in advance if we're unable to answer a question because the answer is not in the record, or if we have to stop any public testimony because the information is also not allowed in the record. All right. The applicant has proposed 2 applications at this point. One is for a zone change and one is for an amendment to the comprehensive plan. There's no development that is proposed at this time. If anyone would like to construct any buildings or do anything further on site, additional public review is required through a public process. Subject site is located near Beaver Creek Road, Highway 213, and Maple Lane Road. It's approximately 16 acres large. As you can tell by the aerial photo, it's surrounded by residential, and there's a variety of commercial zoning designations around there as well, and it is close to Clackamas Community College. The first application proposed by the applicant is a zone change. As you can see on the screen, the site is zoned a variety of residential zoning designations, most of them single family. The lot sizes within those zoning designations range from 10,000 square feet to 3,500 square feet. The applicant has proposed a zone change to mixed-use corridor 2. With that zone change, the applicant has also proposed to amend our comprehensive plan. Our 6 and our 10 zoning designation are within the low-density residential comprehensive plan designation, and the medium-density residential comprehensive plan designation accommodates our R3.5. The applicant has proposed to change that comprehensive plan designation to MUC, which is the comprehensive plan designation associated with MUC2 zoning designation. In addition, the applicant has proposed some limits on their application. They have self-imposed a limitation on the uses that can be performed on site. Normally within the mixed-use corridor 2 zoning designation, there is a menu of permitted uses and conditional uses. The applicant has chosen to identify the uses on the screen and prohibit them from occurring on site. Generally, most of the uses are associated with higher trip uses such as retail or restaurants or things like that.
So once, assuming we do this, once it goes through, once the zone change goes through, those become codified inside the zone change. So if the property was sold to someone else, they would still be stuck with these conditions?
That is correct.
Okay.
It's identified as a condition of approval as well, and so when we do subsequent reviews, we'll keep referring back to this zone change. The second limitation imposed by the applicant is a trip cap, which means the transportation impact coming from the site. The applicant has done a review to determine how many transportation trips can come from the current zoning designation. So we're ignoring the current uses that are there. We're just looking at the base zone. And if that was to be developed to the full extent in which it can, how many trips does that include? So we look at the AM peak and the PM peak. Then the applicant has chosen to limit the new zoning designation to that same transportation impact. So in effect, there is no change in maximum transportation impact between what is permitted currently and what is permitted under the mixed-use corridor 2 zoning designation. That the number of trips is identified on the screen. No development would be allowed that exceeds either value, the AM or the PM, and a modification would be required if they wanted to exceed that value. That modification would have to go through the same process that the zone change went through, which means it would have to go before the Planning Commission as well as the City Commission for approval. So you may wonder how we're going to track this trip cap. And we will do so by reviewing all land use applications that are associated with the site. So again, we go back and look at the zone changes and all those conditions that are tied with the property. And then when we review business license, we'll look at that as well. So we'll require the applicant to provide an accounting of the previously approved trips, the trips that they're proposing, and they must demonstrate that both the AM peak hour trips and the PM peak hour trips are below the maximum standard. There's a staff report that's provided in the documentation that shows compliance with all of the applicable criteria. There are two major issues that came up before the Planning Commission, so I wanted to highlight them for you quickly. First was a concern regarding environmental protection, such as slopes and landslides and trees and streams and things like that. And at this point, the applicant hasn't proposed any development on site. When they do come in for a development review application, that's when we'll know what buildings they're building and where they're building them. And we'll review that against the applicable code in our Oregon City Municipal Code. So we do not believe that the zone change itself does adversely affect any overlays. The second one was the intersection of Beaver Creek and 213. So as you may recall, 2 years ago, we updated our transportation system plan. And when we did that, we realized that the intersection of Beaver Creek and 213 is busy. Within the scope of the TSP, which lasted till 2035, we realized that that intersection does not meet our mobility standards or our acceptable level of congestion. So we did a study and we tried to figure out solutions. And we identified some solutions, but most of the solutions were far too expensive, and thus they weren't reasonable for actually being implemented. So what we did is we identified the little solutions that we have in our TSP, which include an extension of a left turn lane and some signal improvements. And then we said, we'll fix this problem a little bit later. So we identified a project to do a corridor study to really figure out what the solution is, because at the time we were doing this whole TSP thing. So now, before development actually occurs, people will have to look at the TSP, implement the projects that are proposed, and we'll have to do that corridor study. In the meantime, we're allowing permitted and conditional uses to just keep going through with their traffic impacts, provided that they fix the improvements identified in the TSP and in the code, which looks at street improvements as well.
As long as there's no increase in trip count.
Yes. So for permitted, you get as much as you can because you're permitted. It's just when we look at zone changes, we didn't want to put higher trips on this intersection. And thus, the application to this proposal is that they're not changing the amount of trips allowed through the intersection. What's allowed currently is what will be allowed under the proposed zoning designation, and that is the applicable criteria for this application. Pete should be having copies for you of the testimony we received. So with that, we would recommend that the City Commission provide a tentative approval with conditions, and then we'll come back to you in 2 weeks with finalized findings for the first reading of the ordinance. We do have staff in the room to answer any questions. We have John Ripplinger with Ripplinger and Associates, who is our transportation consultant. In addition, we have John Mackler, who is the planning manager for ODOT, and he can also talk to you about the intersection of Beaver Creek and 213. Are there any questions I can answer for you at this time?
Buddy? Ms. Richter, do you have anything else to say?
I do. I think you are receiving copies of testimony from Christine Kaczynski.
Correct.
And is there some additional Paul Edgar testimony too?
No, it was just an email received from Paul that included.
Okay, so the only thing in addition to the items on your chart is the Ms. Kaczynski testimony.
Correct.
Before we move to the public testimony this evening, I'd like for the commission to make a decision about whether or not it wishes to open the record and consider this new evidence, which is not the way the code specifies for type 4 review, or reject this evidence as new. You had an opportunity to review these matters. Primarily, they focus on this Metro Urban Growth Management Functional Plan allegations. And a lot of that testimony didn't come in until after, that issue was not raised until after the Planning Commission closed its deliberation, or closed the record. So let me tell you what happened here. November 9th was the first hearing, was intended to be the first hearing on the Historic Resources Plan amendments. There was a noticing issue, so the matter was continued. Anyone from November 9th until February 11th.
November 23rd?
No. Until, when was the last time, when did the public hearing close? February?
January 11th. And then they did final written arguments at January 25th.
So until January 11th to submit any evidence that they wished. And some additional public testimony related to the Metro Urban Growth Management Functional Plan came in after that point. The Planning Commission rejected it. The arguments that are presented in the Mr. Edgar's testimony relate to that, and Planning Commission rejected it. Therefore, it is new evidence, and you all need to make a decision about whether or not you would wish to reject the Edgar testimony on that. The other testimony relates to additional traffic counts that were not in the record before the Planning Commission. There's a letter from a Miss Browning, citing studies and websites with examples that are not in the record. And then you got a letter that we just distributed from Ms. Kozinski. And Ms. Kozinski did testify before the Planning Commission, and I believe that much of this testimony is in the record. So I believe it would be appropriate for you to accept Ms. Kozinski's testimony and reject the 4 items that are listed in this table.
Well, it seems to me that the rules are the rules. And if people needed to have testimony in by a specific date, I'm certain that you or Bill or whoever it was gave plenty of information at those hearings about when the record closed and all of those sorts of issues. And if most of what Ms. Kozinski is saying in this letter is already in the record, I don't see any reason for us to accept any of this testimony at this late date.
Well, the public record is open, and...
Hold on. Explain that to me.
We are accepting testimony. We opened the hearing.
Okay.
We are accepting testimony on a limited basis when it relates to the issues and evidence that were already raised.
Right, but none of this was in the record, is what you're saying.
None of the items in this table were in the that are in this packet were in the record.
Okay. So what is your rationale for allowing Ms. Kozinski's letter?
These items she and others raised during the previous proceedings.
So you didn't find anything in here that was new?
Only one thing, and that's that a certain number of additional vehicles would go through the intersection Beaver Creek and 213. That number is not in the record. Everything
130,000?
Yes.
So we could redact the 130,000, or you can reject the whole letter.
One second.
Are we open for discussion here?
Yes.
Okay.
So, fire away.
So, you're saying there's an extra 130,000 vehicles going through the intersection? Is that what you just said, Ms. Rickman?
That's our belief is that is new evidence, that is not in the record.
Okay. But the traffic consultant has already issued that information about the trip counts and how much of that intersection is going to be used. Where does this information, is this just where does this 135,000 extra vehicles come from?
I don't know the answer to that.
So it's not really, it's just
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Commissioner Pauly?
I think that line, the new information, we need to be consistent and not allow new information. The rest of it has already been spoken to at the Planning Commission, so that should be, I think that should be part of the record. But we need to be consistent and not allow new information, because that's what we do.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
I support that.
I agree with that as well.
Before you vote, I have an objection to this, please.
Come on up, sir. Name and affiliation for the record, please. Yes.
My name is Michael Robinson. My mailing address is 1120 Northwest Cooch, spelled C-O-U-C-H, Street, 10th floor, Portland, 972094128. I apologize. I'm sure you didn't think you were actually becoming a court, but apparently that's the way you're going to have to operate tonight. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I don't agree that all of this information was previously in the record. I agree with what Ms. Richter told you was not in the record, but if with the mayor's permission, let me point you to other things that are not in the record. If the author of the letter believes I'm incorrect, the burden is her to show that it's in the record. And I might add, in the way of argument, your code is very clear. You are not allowed to reopen the record. Some codes offer their legislative bodies that choice. Your code is one of those that does not. So I understand that it's often confusing for citizens, but nevertheless it would be unfair to allow evidence to come into the record to parties who believe that the record was closed. So in addition to what Ms. Richter described to you, I'm looking at the first paragraph. I don't believe the 130,000 is in the record. Ms. Richter, is that what you were saying? Yes. Okay, I agree with that. I'm going to the second page. At the top of the first paragraph, in the fourth line, the sentence beginning "after the hearing ended." Well, after the hearing ended clearly is outside of the record because the hearing closed. The record closed with the hearing. That sentence needs to be struck. I believe the following paragraph, the second full paragraph, is outside of the record. I believe the third paragraph may be outside of the record. It doesn't recall, I'm sorry, I don't recall that that particular argument or evidence was in the record. And the fourth full paragraph beginning lastly, I don't believe is in the record either. At least the part about vast amounts of water. Again, if someone's going to assert that their evidence is in the record, they bear the burden of proof to demonstrate to this body how it is. I believe that the portions of the letter I've cited are not in the record, and I'd ask the City Commission to adopt a motion striking them and not further consider this evidence.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Well,
So.
Fire away.
All right. I do agree with the applicant that the sentence "after the hearing ended," that sentence is not in the record, and I do agree that the third paragraph on the second page is not in the record. All else, I believe, is in the record.
The water and the insurance coverage.
Water is in the record, insurance coverage is in the record.
Okay. Well, here's my opinion, and it's just my opinion, and that is that the rules are the rules. You needed to have testimony in by a certain time. If you didn't get it in, and this one came in at 5 o'clock today, that we just don't allow it. And if any of these parties, want to come and talk tonight, they're able to do so, but only about things that are in the record, correct?
Correct.
So I guess it's up to the commission whether you want to accept Ms. Kaczynski's letter as however the attorneys and the applicant wish it to be redacted, or will we just dismiss it out of hand?
For the record, can you reiterate when the record was closed and when that deadline was? Because this was submitted at 5 p.m.
The record was closed to the public on January 11th. The applicant was allowed to provide final written rebuttal until a week later, and that was provided at the Planning Commission on January 25th.
But when did it open? November 9th?
It opened on, well, the first Planning Commission hearing was on November 9th. It was opened a month or so before that when we sent out the public notices the first time.
And it was continued.
It was continued from
That's
November
correct.
9th to January 11th.
So there was ample time.
What's the pleasure?
I would move not to consider any of this additional information.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Mengelberg, seconded by Commissioner Smith. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Pauly?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. Okay. Ms. Richter, where are we now?
We are at the applicant's presentation.
Okay. I'm going to tell everybody in the audience, whether you're a presenter or a commenter or just in the audience, we're going to be very strict with our time limits tonight. We have 3 of these to do. They're all fairly controversial in one way or another. So 3 minutes to regular citizens, 5 minutes to a representative of a recognized Oregon City Neighborhood Association or civic organization, and 15 minutes, I believe, is to the applicant. Is that correct?
Correct.
10 minutes to the
15.
applicant.
Oh, 15.
Well, who is it?
It's 15.
15, that's what I thought. That's you can be shorter if you wish. You'll never hear me complain about shorter.
Mike Robinson on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Nacita submitted 2 large notebooks to your city reporter. May I look at those? I have no idea what's in them, and I'm reluctant to begin our presentation without some assurance that that's not new evidence. So may I just...
hang on.
Sure. But could we just do that while...
if you're going to suggest that we do that while others are speaking, that's fine with me. Would the mayor allow me then to make... I don't want you to accept that until I've had a chance to look at it.
We're gonna formally make that decision.
Thank you.
Well, hang on a second. So, Mr. Nacita has submitted that information to you, right? So, for all intents and purposes, as of the moment he handed that to you, it's public record.
It's a public record, but it's not in the land use record until it has.
No. I understand that.
This body has to accept it, and you can expressly reject it if you wish. But I don't know what's in it as the applicant's representative.
Well, that wasn't intended to be part of this record, was it?
I
thought that was supporting material to support his idea that many of us should have recused ourselves.
But that's all part of this proceeding. I think it was intended to be put in the record, but we have to review it in order to make a decision about whether or not we're going to accept it or not, and we haven't done that yet, so we're going to get to that.
Okay.
We also don't know what's in that.
Thank you for your courtesy.
Minutes,
sorry.
Has my time started yet?
No. Okay. Go.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the commission. My name is Dan Fowler. I'd like to introduce my partner who goes unscathed at these hearings, Mark Foley. Mike Robinson from Perkins Coie. And also in the audience and maybe up for questions and testimony in a moment will be Mike Ard from Lancaster Engineering, Tom Sissel from Sissel Engineering, and Dan Trussler from Hart Krauser, our geotech. Tonight, believe it or not, it's been told, and it's true, I do know all of you. And I've known you a long time, most of you. And you know, and I know, that even though I know you, I have not spoken to you about this hearing, and I have been working on this for 9 years. And that may be hard for some members of the public to believe, but I can look each one of you in the eye, and I know it's true, and you know it's true. So it's really a pleasure for me to tell you a little bit about what we've been up to for the last 9 years on this corner. We took a piece of property that had fractured ownership, 11 different parcels, 6 different houses, a school district, an ODOT piece of property that went to the city, and a church, and some vacant property that was zoned all residential. And in the meantime, the community grew up around it, and it was in our minds, and hopefully, and in the minds of the planning commission, because they agreed with us, it needed a little bit of a change. And what we're trying to do here, quite frankly, is create a very nice piece of Oregon City, one that is low in impact by its use and by its traffic, and that provides needed services for our community. So what we did, and none of these properties had to sell to us, we slowly assembled a property in order to do something good. It's that simple. So when we looked at the area, and there was an aerial that showed a nice subdivision on the property, and we all know that there's commercial across the street. So Mark and I and others would sit down and say, what is right? What should happen here? What can happen here? Knowing it's a tough intersection, and knowing the property and the topography and all the challenges it faces, what's the best use there? And so we began to brainstorm about uses that we could have there. And that led us to a zone change to the MUC 2, the zone that we're seeking tonight. We're trying to do something right. We have ideas of development. I can mention those if you really want me to, but this is really about just a change in use. And I might add, it's the first step of many. And I know people want to hear that we put a trip cap in place and automatically think, well, gosh, does that mean that they're never going to help us fix the intersection? No, it doesn't. We know that when we come back for subsequent phases of our development, we have other public hearings about that. The effect of those real developments in terms of any traffic impacts are going to have to be mitigated. We know solutions that we think will help that intersection, and we think those will be accepted by the parties later on, but that's not what tonight's about. So we're not burying our head in the sand. We're not kicking the can down the road. We're not doing any of those cliches. We're trying to go through a process that is the city's process in order to have good development. I might add that we had 3 neighborhood meetings with the neighborhoods. The third one, we explicitly invited everyone who was in opposition to our plan to come with a personal letter. And we also met with the Beaver Creek Hamlet Board on our project. So we've really tried to reach out to the neighborhoods and to the people, even our opposition. And we had some good discussions, actually, in those meetings. So that's just a little bit about how we got here tonight. I'm going to stop because our time is limited. And I'd like to let Mike take it over from here.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, Mayor Holliday, Commission members. My name is Michael Robinson. I'm a land use attorney with the firm of Perkins Coie. I've already given you my mailing address. I'm here to represent Mr. Fowler and talk to you about the approval criteria. So we agree with, of course, with the staff recommendation, and we certainly agree with your Planning Commission's recommendation that this commission approve both the Plan Map Amendment to MUC and the Zoning Map Amendment that implements the Plan Map Amendment to MUC 2. This hearing, because it's a quasi-judicial hearing, is really about whether the applicants met its burden of proof to show by substantial evidence that the approval criteria are satisfied. As Ms. Richter and Ms. Turway told you, we had a very lengthy Planning Commission hearing. I think the Planning Commission listened carefully to all of the issues that were raised, and at the end of the deliberation several weeks later, they concluded that the applicant had met its burden of proof, and I think the record is replete with substantial evidence demonstrating how we've done that. But let me sort of summarize, if I could, please, the main points. And I think Laura's staff report, by the way, was wonderful for its brevity, but it got, frankly, to the main points that this commission should be concerned about. So the applicable approval criteria are found in the statewide planning goals, the urban growth management functional plan, the Oregon City Municipal Code, your zoning ordinance, and certain administrative rules, including the transportation planning rule. The applicant submitted a narrative. We supplemented it with additional findings. There's additional substantial evidence supporting and explaining why the relevant approval criteria and those standards are met. And by the way, simply because something is in your plan doesn't mean it's applicable. As we explain in our submittals, some of those plans have mandatory language. Some of them, are, however, are purely aspirational. Aspirational plan standards are not applicable approval standards. Some of them also direct the City Commission to do certain things. Those don't apply to quasi-judicial applications. And although they were cited as approval criteria, we explained in our written and oral argument to the Planning Commission why they weren't actual approval criteria. And by doing that, what we tried to do is boil down the approval criteria to those the Planning Commission should correctly consider. Then they could look at our evidence and determine whether we met those criteria, and that's what they in fact did. And I think there were 3 major issues, and I'm probably not going to do as good job as Ms. Turway and Dan just did covering the same issues, but let me go at them in a slightly different way. The first was traffic. Dan explained that we have a professional traffic study by the firm of Lancaster Engineering. Mr. Ard, who is with Lancaster, is here tonight to answer any questions this commission may have. But he explained by excluding certain uses and then imposing a trip cap, we continue to meet the transportation planning rule requirement and therefore also satisfy Goal 12. The Oregon Department of Transportation was at the Planning Commission hearing. They agreed with that analysis. Your transportation engineer, Mr. Replinger, has reviewed it and agreed with it. All of this is in the record. So at the end of the day, we demonstrated compliance with the transportation planning rule by assuring that these map amendments won't allow additional trips through that intersection. And as Dan said, we understand our task before development is to come back and do the things that your TSP requires us to do. So this isn't the end of the development process. This is the beginning, and this doesn't even allow development. But in terms of transportation, the applicant fully met its burden and satisfied not only your local code, but Goal 12 and the transportation planning rule. With respect to geotechnical issues, probably the salient testimony was Hart Krauser's representative, Tim Blackwell, showing the Planning Commission a drawing explaining where the slide was and explaining that we're out of the slide. So therefore, testimony regarding slide impacts is quite irrelevant to this application. It's not the same geotechnical setting, and it's not just Mr. Blackwell talking orally to the Planning Commission. It's a thorough study that his firm, Hart Krauser, did, and it is part of the record. That was substantial evidence for the Planning Commission to rely upon to reject arguments that there were geotechnical uncertainties about the site. And the last is always important to communities. Are there sufficient public services and utilities to serve this site? And the evidence is that there is, not just from the applicant, but from your own municipal agencies, which had no objections to this application. So all of that was before your Planning Commission, and after listening to, I thought, some very good questions and arguments on the part of the public, the Planning Commission nevertheless decided that we met our burden of proof. That's why they recommended, I think unanimously, to you that you adopt this application. It's also been suggested, and may be suggested again tonight, that you should yet again continue this hearing. I think your staff has done a good job of managing the myriad requirements imposed on local governments by Metro and the state. As Ms. Richter said, Planning Commission didn't hold the first hearing because the proper notices hadn't been given to the state. We continued it effectively for 60 days so the city could give the right notice to Metro and the state. We did the hearing. It was scheduled for the 17th of February before this body. Even though a late staff report, and I'll say this again, is not prejudice to a party's substantial interest, it couldn't be more clear by LUBA that that's not the case. We nevertheless thought it was appropriate that this commission continue the hearing for 2 weeks. Let's have no doubt about this. But frankly, I think you could have held that commission hearing and not prejudiced anyone's substantial interest. But in my opinion, you did the right thing by continuing it for 2 weeks. There is no issue there. There is no obligation on this commission's part to further continue or hold the record open. We don't think you need to. We're certainly not going to ask for additional final written argument. We think the record couldn't be better for the applicant. We've addressed all the approval criteria. We have all the evidence. And as long as we don't get new evidence into the record today, I'm confident that this should be approved by the City Commission. So with that we ask you to hear everyone who has something to say tonight that's on the record, deliberate as your city attorney recommended, and then make a tentative decision and then return in 2 weeks and adopt written findings explaining your decision. And we thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't give a politician a microphone. Where are we at, Ms. Richter?
We are at public testimony. Who has the cards?
I've got them on my screen. So if there's anyone wishing to testify on this, make sure that you've turned in a card to Ms. Riggs. It'll come up on my monitor. So with no further ado, I will open the public hearing. And first speaker is Mr. Mackler from ODOT. And I would let you know that our rules, we kind of missed something in there. So state agencies, county agencies, you get 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission. My name is John Mackler with the Oregon Department of Transportation, the Planning Manager for Region 1. It seemed useful for me to testify to the Planning Commission, to answer questions and convey the position of the department. You've heard tonight from the staff report clearly about the trip cap. There are a lot of questions. I've received a lot of questions from the public about this decision and the traffic at 213 and Beaver Creek Road. I simply want to affirm that the Oregon Department of Transportation is comfortable with the proposed approach. The trip cap is what satisfies our concern. Any other kind of budget that you would send, the credit card company gives you a limit. You don't get to go over it. So here you are setting a trip cap. The applicant has proposed. They followed the rules in setting that limit. The process that Ms. Turway described would allow you to review any or each development application that comes in to ensure that the trips associated with development don't exceed that cap. And that's a mechanism that is used throughout the state. So it doesn't mean that we're not concerned about traffic at the intersection. It's simply our position that this is the appropriate mechanism for ensuring that this zoning doesn't open a loophole for further degradation of the intersection. And again, as the applicant stated, at the time of development, we'll have more opportunity to investigate what's going to happen, what its impacts could be, and how to properly mitigate them. So if I can answer questions for you, as I did before, I'd be happy to now or after you hear other testimony, if that's okay.
I do have a question. Assuming ODOT gets a lot of money at some future date and is able to make the ideal fix to the Beaver Creek Road intersection that everybody envisions, would your position then be that the development could increase their trip cap if they wanted to?
I need to make sure I unpack that appropriately. If we collectively had the means to add capacity to that intersection, the rules, the transportation planning rule would still apply. You would still be obliged, when you consider development, to find that you follow the rules and pass the certain tests about the impact of traffic, the added volume on that capacity. So I believe that the scenario you're describing, if you follow the rules, if there was added capacity, you would have the opportunity to decide how to use that capacity.
Great, thank you.
Does that?
It makes sense, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else?
But if you're buying Powerball tickets, let me know.
Yeah, that's where I was going. I'm pretty excited.
I like the story you were telling about.
Yeah. I got no question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. So next up we have Paul Edgar and James Nacita.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Paul Edgar, Oregon City. Some of what I wanted to talk about, you guys already have made a ruling on, saying that I can't introduce something that someone shouldn't, that wasn't part of the testimony earlier on. But one of the things that's always been part of the testimony was the staff report. And on page 19 of the staff report, it comes down and spells out traffic considerations. And that's your report. And it says that that they are not applicable. Well, in fact, they are applicable because there's a state goal that is required that they be evaluated, and it's goal 12. And they're also applicable. They can't do this. They can't even make that statement, and they made the statement. And no one really did anything about it, but it is your staff report. And I go right down the line from point after point after point, even to the point of spelling out mitigation, which it says not applicable. But in reality, it is, because goal 12 says that it has to be. And so these are your reports. This is state goals. And then when I combine that with the Metro Functional Plan, which overrides all city code.
The Metro Functional Plan is not in the record.
Yes, it is. It was presented by Jim Nacita as part of the record before this as a relevant point, and I'm just adding to that point. It was, and if you go back to the record, Jim Nacita brought it here and presented it as a factual point. So to disregard that, but no matter what you do, what I don't want to see is this appealed. And what you're doing is you're opening the door to another appeal, and where we start looking dumb as a city. where we start violating rules which override, which are common sense. And that's all I'm talking about. Please don't make decisions that are not based on fact, and we have to adhere to the state transportation goals, and we have to adhere to the Metro Regional Urban Growth Management Functional Plan, and it's Title 12. And both of those are facts. And if we don't, and if you guys violate that, there we go again. And I don't think that's what we really want to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go on, I want to clear something up. So, is the functional plan part of the record or not? Did it come before the Planning Commission?
There was written testimony regarding the Urban Metro Functional Plan that was provided to the Planning Commission and rejected by the Planning Commission on January 25th. Was there other... I did not find any information in the record where there was other
The
written
applicant raised it, and so
documentation.
did the staff in the staff report.
I can take a look if...
Okay. Well, I'd like to have a solid answer on that before we get out of here tonight, if we can.
If the applicant would be willing to tell us when, I can take a look under the record and see if it was there.
Okay. We'll move on to Mr. Nacita.
Thank you. James Nacita, Oregon City. I have 3 points. I'll try to do each one in a minute or so. First one, all of the testimony submitted by anybody after the close of the record of the Planning Commission should be accepted by law. And that is because our city code in OICMC 17.50.090 states that public notices shall include a description of the applicant's proposal along with the list of citations of the approval criteria that the city will use to evaluate the proposal. None of the Metro Code was included in any notice that was issued in this proceeding. State law, ORS 197-7633B, only requires that the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinances provisions be included. Our code is broader, the one I just read, and the Supreme Court in Brentmar versus Jackson County, 321 or 481, said that a city government can be more stringent than state law. So our code's more stringent. Our code requires all the applicable criteria to be listed, including the Metro Code. It wasn't listed in the public notice. Secondly, raised below by staff in its staff report before the Planning Commission was Goal 2.3 of our comprehensive plan, corridors, focused transit-oriented, higher intensity mixed-use development along selected transit corridors. So they say this plan complies with our comprehensive plan, but it doesn't. The mixed-use corridor comp plan designation and zoning designation only applies to those parcels of land that have convenient transit along the property. This property does not have any transit along the stretch of Beaver Creek Road that is adjacent to it, nor on Maple Lane Road. So by law, it doesn't qualify to be mixed-use corridor. Now, how much time do I have? Let me see what I was going to say. Oh, and on my bias record, I don't know what the concern is about including it tonight. I mean, you can't submit information to substantiate bias when you don't know whether it's going to be an issue or not. 17.50.180, objections to procedure. Any party who objects to procedure, including for bias, may make that objection before a final decision is made on that. So I made my objection before you guys made a final decision on this land use application. So if the Planning Commission had turned down this application, it wouldn't have been a relevant challenge because it wouldn't have gotten here. It would have been sent back. So I can submit my evidence for bias here because I'm challenging you guys.
Thank you, sir.
That's when it's relevant. Thank you.
And finally, we have Elizabeth Grazier-Lindsay.
My name's Elizabeth Grace Lindsay, and what I wanted to say about this application is that it's in violation of the transportation planning rule because it would significantly affect the transportation facility and reduce its performance below the minimum acceptable standard. The traffic cap analysis was in error because it's based on a projected development that exceeds what would be allowed under existing zoning. The analysis ignored the transportation problems, which would have reduced the amount of development that would have been allowed. The analysis of how much development could occur under existing zoning also ignored conflicts with natural resources, because we have Abernathy Creek running across this property. It also ignored the landslide area that that is at this site, which is immediately adjacent to the site, where around Christmas time we had many apartments evacuated. The geological report that considered landslides mentioned that infiltration should not be allowed on this site. And for commercial development, that might mean you put asphalt or concrete across the whole site and have to figure out what to do with that water. But when you have a residential area, it's a lot harder to deal with that, preventing that infiltration, and that wasn't considered at all when the trip cap was come up with. It also ignores the trip cap analysis also ignored the problem that is occurring with sewage, and that is that there has been a near moratorium level in the sewage lines in this area near Highway 213. We see in the sewer master plan that there's some overflowing areas down this line. And in addition, the sewage plant is over the safe capacity and has a higher amount, has a lower retention time than all of the other sewer plants in our region. So the trip cap analysis was in error, which is the basis of the application. The trip cap also neglected to comply with the city's transportation system plan. In the 2013 TSP, it solves the city's very severe traffic problems by having half of all future trips be by alternate modes of transportation, such as buses, bikes, and walking. The trip cap wasn't applied to this application, so the trip cap should actually be a half of what you've been presented.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So to be clear, there's nobody else in the room who wants to testify in this matter? Then I'm going to close the public hearing. Oh, well, excuse me.
Sorry, they have rebuttal, and I believe some additional testimonies come in. Could we take a break?
Well, I was headed there. I was just going to do it after I close the public hearing, but are we still, so the public hearing is still open for rebuttal, is that right? Yes. Then we're going to take a 10-minute break. Reconvene the meeting. And the applicant has a rebuttal.
Thank you, Mayor Holliday, Commission members. Mike Robinson, again on behalf of the applicant. Let me begin by responding to Mr. Nacita's 2 notebook submittal. I appreciate having an opportunity to look at it. Thank you. I agree with Mr. Nacita. 99.9% of it is apparently related to his bias challenges. However, I tabbed 3 pages at the end, which apparently are printed from it looks like there's some kind of email chat going on. It appears to me to be substantive and unrelated to the bias challenge. It looks like it's after the Planning Commission hearing. I think the Commission should exclude it. Everything else in the notebooks, I have no objection to that. So maybe we can address that. So let me address rebuttal. We agree with ODOT's testimony. We appreciate the fact that they were here both at the Planning Commission and I think it's very helpful to have that agency present and able to answer questions. I appreciate the issue Mr. Edgar raised, and let me address both him and Ms. Grazer Lindsay's testimony. So The evidence is, there's lots of evidence in the record explaining how we've addressed both the TPR and Goal 12, but here's the drill down, so to speak, on the TPR. The Oregon courts say you have a two-step analysis to go through the TPR. You have to first show whether there's a significant effect. If there's not, you're done, you don't have to do anything else. Here, obviously, there would be a significant effect. But the second step is, if you determine there's a significant effect, what's your mitigation? And the rule itself gives you the various kinds of mitigation that you can propose to a local government, such as this. Mitigation we propose is allowed in OAR 660, 012, 0060, sub 2, I think it's D or E, and it's essentially conditions of approval. So the applicants proposed conditions of approval that, one, limit uses, and two, impose a trip cap. That's exactly what the TPR proposes. If you were to call ODOT back up here, I think what Mr. Mackler would say, and perhaps he already said it, and I was busy looking through the notebooks, the whole point is to assure that a PAPA, post-development plan amendment such as this, doesn't set the potential for more trips when the system can't accommodate them. It's exactly what the applicant did. Every applicant wants as many uses as possible. Here we're excluding uses so we can minimize PM and AM peak hour trips and thus maintain no additional trips on the system and thus not make it worse. It's exactly what the TPR allows. That evidence is in the record. It's fully compliant with both the TPR and Goal 12. I also want to say that in my opinion, anything having to do with transportation and the Metro Urban Growth Management Functional Plan was not raised. I looked at my findings that I submitted to the Planning Commission, and the only Metro Functional Plan issues that my notes reflect and the findings reflect were Metro Functional Plan 3.07, 810C, and 120, which are housing. Housing and consistency with the comprehensive plan. So I don't think there was, I don't recall that any Metro Functional Plan transportation issue was raised. It strikes me as something new, but in any event, I will say it also, Title 12 does not trump the TPR. Local laws don't trump state laws. That's just a given. Mr. Nacita raised Goal 2.3 of the Oregon City Municipal Code. Your staff report to the Planning Commission at page 9 of 46 explains how 2.3 was addressed and satisfied. I don't think you need to do more. Mr. Nacita is correct. Your code is broader in terms of what notice has to include. State law says only local code provisions. Your code essentially says everything. Nevertheless, that doesn't mean that just because, well, so there's two issues here. First of all, it doesn't mean you have to reopen the record. Your code is also equally clear that the record is closed at this level of review. And the second thing it means is he was not surprised by this. He raised functional plan issues. So even without the notice including that, he was well aware of them. He raised them. There's no prejudice to his substantial rights. He wasn't surprised by anything. So there's no error there. Lastly, what Mr. Ard would like me to say in part about Ms. Grasser-Lindsay's testimony is it wouldn't matter whether Title 12 or any of these other things are relevant. The reality is Lancaster Engineering Study looked at all the issues we had to look at and went through the trip cap analysis, and it's acceptable. And ODOT said that it was. It was difficult for me to, and I apologize, I probably wasn't listening carefully enough. I don't think any of the issues she raised regarding how the significant effect was violated are really relevant to how that rule functions. The whole purpose of the rule is to identify significant effect and then suggest mitigation measures that eliminate it. That's what we've done here. That's what the rule anticipates. So, at least for our part, we appreciate your listening to us and the public tonight. We think you've had a good discussion, but we think at the end of your deliberation you should conclude, as your Planning Commission did, that the approval criteria are satisfied. We ask you to close the public hearing tonight, tentatively approve, and adopt findings in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now may I close the public hearing? Okay, so I will close the public hearing. And we're on the...
We need to make some decisions about the record.
Okay.
Can we
Go
do
ahead.
that now?
Yeah, you do that.
Okay. We've received, as I understand it, we've received 2 groups of items. We've got a number of bias notebooks, and I have flipped through them quickly. None of them relate to the substance of the proceeding. They contain a number of deed records and historic minutes. I do believe that these materials can come in for purposes of the bias challenge. But I agree with the applicant's counsel that this email at the end relates to grade separated interchange for the intersection of Highway 213 and Beaver Creek Road, apparently to relieve congestion. This does not appear to have anything to do with a bias challenge. The bias challenge is made, and in fact these items are dated January and December of 2015. So I would suggest that these items be rejected from the record, but that the other two notebooks come in. You also received some testimony from Ms. Grazer-Lindsay. We would, all of the testimony that is in her narrative form here appears to be what you received orally. She also submitted a page from the transportation system plan, which you would is appropriate. But then there is some crash data that is new, and it should be rejected from the record. So I believe the motion would be to accept the NICETA materials, except for these pages that I have flagged, and the rejection of the Elizabeth Grazer-Lindsay crash data.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Pauly,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye. What's next?
Any questions for staff? And a tentative decision? Deliberation, a tentative decision.
Who wants to go first?
I find the testimony of the ODOT representative very compelling, and the traffic report that clearly showed that the trip generation was going to be acceptable, that the trip cap makes sense. It's a good solution to a problem. Mixed use can tend to even out the amount of trips versus straight residential, so it might actually help the general area there. And I'm encouraged to see what the future holds for this development, and I would support it.
Yes.
I mean, I'm going to probably say this again later this evening, but my hat's off to the Planning Commission and to our staff for all of this work here and stuff. Usually I have questions and stuff, but everything's kind of spoken for here, so so I appreciate what the staff has done and the Planning Commission. So that's all I have on it. So I did have an interest in the trip cap, but that was addressed. So.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
No, my questions were answered.
Carol?
So this area is already zoned. It's already zoned. So they're just asking the applicant for a zone change. They're showing that the trip count won't be higher than what is already zoned for. They have conditions of approval. They've had open conversations. They've gone to neighborhood associations. Since I've been on the commission, I've seen a real step up in developers trying to be accessible and trying to connect with neighbors and concerned citizens to reach out. And I feel you've done that. We are all here available and accessible for people to reach out to us. So in the Planning Commission, they did a very thorough job. They passed this 7-0. So, and this is just preliminary. This is just for a zoning change. Nothing is being built at this time. When there is something that's going to be built, it is going to go through a very stringent process. It has to meet the requirements. The law has become much more strict than it used to be. There's more requirements than ever for builders, and I have faith in that.
Okay, so as usual, I will have the final word on this, and that is that at the beginning of this meeting, someone came up and insulted me, for lack of a better word, saying that we don't have a transparent and open public process. And if we look at just this particular application, it's been going since early November. People have had multiple upon multiple upon multiple opportunities to testify, and I'm sure that they all have. Certainly the Planning Commission had 3 meetings on this. Is that right? 3 or 4? So, and to suggest that the Planning Commission is somehow in the pocket of any of these applicants couldn't be further from the truth. We have a very diverse set of folks on the Planning Commission. We have one guy that's retired from the city of Oregon City. We have people from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, and they came together in a 7-0 vote to support this application. And as I have said before, in fact said in front of the Planning Commission, without some very serious red flag or issue, I want to uphold the Planning Commission almost every time. There would have to be something, glaringly wrong for me to go against what those people, they went through 3 or 4 meetings, many hours of testimony, many hours of reading. Why would I want to go against those people? That kind of would denigrate the service that the folks at the Planning Commission give to our city. So I'm okay.
All right.
So, give us a sample motion, would you, Ms. Richter?
It's tentative approval.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I move tentative approval of PZ 15-01 Comprehensive Plan Amendment and ZC 1503 Zone Change. Excuse me just a second. Historic Properties LLC Zone Change and Comprehensive Plan Amendment for property located near Beaver Creek Road, Highway 213, and Maple Lane Road. With a return for findings on
March 16th.
March 16th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Shaw, seconded by Commissioner Smith. Is there any additional discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Pauley?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg? Aye. Mayor Holliday?
Aye. Okay. So onward and upward.
Thank you.
We'll give you guys a chance to get out of the room before we move on.
Can I get a water?
Sure.
Can I go get another water?
Sweetly. Do that real quick. So apparently we had one more housekeeping item that we need to get done so we can stop paying an hourly guy to sit in the audience. So we're going to look at 7B, 15-713. Are we back? Okay. First reading of ordinance number 16-1001, amending Oregon City Municipal Code Title 5, Business Licenses and Regulations.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Parno?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and City Commissioners. As Ryan said, he is worth it. We're gonna ask for the first reading of ordinance 16-1001, which would amend Oregon City Municipal Code related to business licenses. And simply, we're asking to put in an appeal process for when a business license is denied or revoked, and that's something that probably should have been in code before. That was a result of some of the things, requests that we've had from folks. And in addition to that, make some additional minor changes, in my opinion, from that, just to update the code from where we've been. And so I think you remember Ryan Bredehoff. He's our financial analyst here at the city, and he led a work group consisting of city employees that recently looked at the business license function. Okay. That's pretty much my whole presentation. But I'll just go ahead and repeat all that real quick. So yes, I'm presenting proposing changes to the Oregon City Municipal Code Title 5 dealing with business licenses. The changes came about first with a due process mediation case and then various citizen input. And we held 3 different meetings, internal staff meetings with finance, human resources, planning, building, and code enforcement, where we discussed what changes needed to be made. And we also reviewed a 2010 consultants report that was done. The city hired a consultant back in 2010 and made 24 different recommendations for the business licenses. So we reviewed those
to see if there was any of those that we could also implement. And then, of course, we did a comparison with neighboring jurisdictions. Anytime we propose changes, we like to look and see what neighboring jurisdictions are doing to make sure it's in alignment with that. All right, here are the changes. The first one, provision for appeal. So this would be if a business license application is denied or an existing license is revoked, this gives the applicant an avenue for appeal, and that appeal would go to the city manager. The next item is an expiration date on an application. Right now, an application can sit for an unlimited amount of time. So what will happen is someone will submit an application. It won't have all the necessary information. We'll call them to get that information, but the application will just sit and sit. So we just want to put some sort of stop date on that. So we're proposing 90 days. After that, the applicant would have to reapply. The next item is to ensure fee amounts are adopted in resolution. Right now, the amount of the business license is in the code, and we don't like that. A lot of the city fee amounts are adopted in resolution, and so we just want to take those out of the code and put them in resolution. So we're not proposing any changes to the fee amounts. We're just taking them out of the code. And then finally, the one thing we are proposing is an application fee. And this is just to recognize that for the business license process, the vast majority of the effort by staff is in that first year when a business applies. Each subsequent year, the renewal is actually pretty straightforward. So we want to be able to recover staff costs by having an application fee in that first year. And then each year after that would just be the normal fee, the renewal of the business license.
So it's a first-time fee.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then finally, there were just some other minor administrative changes. We took this as an opportunity to reorganize some of the sections, make a few minor corrections and things like that. And that's it. Those are the changes. Any questions about those? The final slide here is just really for your information. Like I said, we're not changing any of the fee amounts, but we did take a look at how our fees compare for a business license, how they compare to other cities. The last time we did this was in around 2010 or 2011. And when we adopted them back then, we've just adjusted them each year for inflation, but we haven't really done any comparison since then. So we went ahead and did that now, but we saw that our fees are on average with other cities, and if anything, maybe a little lower, and we feel like that's appropriate. So we're not, again, not proposing any fee changes.
The reason we feel that's appropriate is we know that Oregon City is very pro-business, and so we're right in that range, and we didn't feel it necessary this time to increase the business license. We're administering the program with the revenue we have.
So the next steps will be at the next commission meeting will be the second reading of this ordinance, and then we'll also bring the resolution to you, which will have all those fees, like I said, that are currently in code. They'll be in the resolution with that one additional new initial application fee.
Questions?
Don't
feel like you have to.
I don't. But this is, we have a choice of trying to bury our costs into our general fund or something like that. See, where right now I think our tax rate is like $460 per thousand, and I think we're able to go up to $520 or something as our cap. And so our choices are either we raise our tax rates up to take care of these costs and our building fees, which we just are taking care of too tonight, and keep our tax rate down. So it's kind of fee generated, which I think we can all agree is a good thing. So,
anybody else?
Thanks for looking at this, and it's good to assess and see where we are and see what can be improved. So it's good to check in and do that. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Commissioner, and this was in response to also some comments from some of the business applicants, so it's nice to be able to do that and be responsive.
Motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Ms. Richter?
Ordinance number 16-1001, an ordinance amending Oregon City Municipal Code Title V, Business Licenses and Regulation.
Call a roll.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Pauly?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. Okay, you're off the clock.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission.
Go punch out. Hurry up.
So back to the lighter side of life. 16-104 Providence Willamette Falls Medical Center, zone change 15-04, zone change planning file 15-02, amendment to comprehensive plan, and CP 15-02, master plan amendment. Mr. Conkle.
Thank you, Mayor. Evening, Commissioners. I'll be turning it over to Ms. Turway to give the presentation for the Willamette Falls.
Before we do that, we need to do the legal. Sorry. On February 17th, 2016, the City Commission opened the hearing on the Providence Willamette Falls Medical Center applications for a comprehensive plan amendment and zone change. The hearing was then continued to this evening. A staff report has been prepared and been made available to the public 7 days before tonight's hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to this proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria along with written comments and input received through the public notification process. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart over there. The Planning Commission has recommended approval, and the matter is now before the City Commission for final consideration. As such, the City Commission's review is on the record, and only issues raised before the Planning Commission may be raised this evening. Any new issues will be rejected and not considered. Anyone who wishes to speak in this appeal should fill out a speaker's card and give it to planning staff. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name. Testimony should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. Given that the record is limited to the issues raised before the Planning Commission, it would be very helpful if you identified the circumstances that surrounded the presentation of the issues before the Planning Commission. A person may submit written material while the public record is open. Any materials received by city staff during the time period when the record is open that does not contain new evidence will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to city staff in order to be considered by the City Commission to become part of the record. This includes PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, and other exhibits used in oral testimony. If the Commission makes a decision to which you disagree, any issue that you wish to appeal must have been raised for the Commission's consideration. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the City and all parties can respond, the issue will not be adjudged appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, Oregon Revised Statute 197796 requires us to announce the following. The failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issues precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Now I will ask if any commissioner has any ex parte conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statement to declare.
No.
No.
I attended the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association presentation on this matter. Also, the hospital presented to the Trillium Park Homeowners Association several times to brief us on the project. I live in the Trillium Park Homeowners Association area, and my husband serves on the board. It's immediately adjacent to the hospital property.
Now we feel like we have to list every possible connection. My sister works at Willamette Falls Hospital.
Have any of the commissioners visited the site since our last meeting?
Yes.
No.
Does any member of the public wish to challenge any decision maker regarding these disclosures or their participation?
I do. Mr. Daniels?
Mayor Holliday, members of the commission, my name is William Daniels, and as you know, I don't testify often, but I felt it was something I wanted to volunteer to do tonight. I'm a member of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association Steering Committee, and I wanted to read a short couple of minutes of testimony, if I may. On February 17th, at our last City Commission meeting, our mayor stated on record that the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association was against development. The McLaughlin Neighborhood Association has taken a serious look at the Providence Willamette Falls application, and we have real concerns regarding that application itself and the procedure used in bringing that application forward for public comment. Contrary to the mayor's suggestion, the members of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association are not obstructionists, hence that symbolism of the banana on the desk, The mayor's comments show clear personal bias under the City Code 17.50.160, Section C, and the state land use laws. Therefore, after extensive discussion and review of the code with the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, respectfully request that you, Mayor Holliday, recuse yourself from the decision-making process regarding the Providence Willamette Falls Hospital application. Our steering committee, finally, I'd also like to add that our steering committee would like to thank the city for providing the required 7 days' notice for the sake of better allowing the public participation in the governance process. McLaughlin Neighborhood Association leadership is doing what we were elected to do, to represent our membership and address the ongoing concerns of not having enough time to properly respond to issues that impact not just our neighborhood, but all of our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there has been a challenge to the mayor's impartiality to consider this matter, and I would just ask the mayor once again if you feel that you can make a decision in this case based on the evidence submitted in the record and the applicable approval criteria.
Yes.
And uphold the ordinances of the city, enforce them as it is your job to do.
Absolutely.
Okay. Moving on, staff report.
All right.
Oh, I guess did anyone else have anything?
No.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, no?
She has a citizen comment card in for when the public is
Oh,
open,
okay.
when the
All right.
hearing is open.
So, Ms. Turway.
Thank you very much. So again, this hearing is on the record. The items raised in this hearing are limited to the items raised before the Planning Commission, and no new evidence is allowed. The applicant has proposed a master plan amendment, a zone change and amendment to our comprehensive plan. No development is proposed at this time. If the applicant would like to do any development on site, they would have to come back with a development application, which includes an additional public review process. The subject site is generally located on Division Street near 15th. It includes the Willamette Falls Hospital. And a little history on the site before we get into it. There was a master plan that was approved. It was submitted in 2011, approved in 2012. The master plan boundaries are identified in yellow on the screen. You could see how it lays against the proposed boundary today. A little more about that approved master plan. It was for 104,000 square feet of additional development on site. It was to be implemented through 3 phases. Phase 1 was that parking lot at Penn Lane and Division. It's been paved, and that project has been crossed off the list. The remaining projects include all projects in Phase 2 and Phase 3. So Phase 2 has a list of projects. Phase 3 has 2 medical office buildings that we'll talk about in a bit more detail. As you can see, all of the projects may be implemented until the year 2021. All right, so first let's talk about those master plan amendments. The master plan amendments are to consolidate and decrease the size of those medical office buildings that were previously identified in Phase 3. That reduction would reduce the overall square footage of the master plan. Also, they would like to expand their master plan boundary by approximately 1 acre and revise their phasing plan. We'll get into a few more details about each item. First is the consolidation and decrease of the medical office building and campus. So there used to be 2 medical office buildings, one on the west side of Division and one on the east side of Division, the west MOB and the east MOB. The applicant had each of those facilities would be 20 to 25,000 square feet for a total of 40 to 50,000 square feet. In this amendment, they have proposed to only construct the west medical office building, and that would be a 2-story facility that would be 30 to 35,000 square feet. So the overall has a reduction in square footage of medical office facilities. In addition, they would reduce the overall square footage within the master plan by that same amount. On the screen, you can see a screenshot of generally where the west MOB would be located between 16th and 15th on Division. Next is the master plan boundary expansion. As we saw in the previous slide, there's some space to the left and the right of the medical office building It's accommodated for in this expansion area. The expansion includes 6 properties. They all total about an acre. The purpose of this expansion is to accommodate the West Medical Office Building and provide additional off-street parking near the facility to reduce the impact on the neighborhood, so there would be more off-street parking rather than on-street parking. And it also improve access so that people don't have to go so far to get to the facility from where they park. The last master plan amendment is to revise the phasing plan. The amendment would put all of the projects into phase 2. So we already reduced the medical office building to 1 building rather than 2, and this we're just adding that 1 medical office building into phase 2. You can see on the bottom of the screen the previous phasing. The timeline for implementation is still the same, so they would have until 2021 to do any of the projects in their master plan. And there's no particular order in which they're required. So now let's talk about the zone change. The zone change is identified in red on the screen. It's about a half an acre on 16th Street. It's currently within the R6 zoning designation, which is single-family residential, and the applicant has proposed to change the zoning designation to mixed-use employment. In that zoning designation, the applicant will also have to change the comprehensive plan designation for the site. It's currently within the low-density residential comprehensive plan designation and will have to change to the mixed-use employment comprehensive plan designation. There is a staff report dated January 14th or January 4th in the record that shows compliance with all applicable approval criteria. The primary concern at the Planning Commission level was the removal of 5 homes. 2 of the homes were those R6 homes, so zoned residential. 3 of the homes are in the mixed-use employment designation already. The city believes that we've overcome that loss of those 5 homes in many different ways. One is that we've approved a lot of zone changes to allow additional capacity for more homes within the city, so a little under 1,000 since 2002. We've also created mixed-use zoning designations which allow unlimited housing. We have allowed accessory dwelling units in all residential zones where we allow single-family homes. We have cottage housing, and we've approved concept plans with another approximately 3,300 dwelling units. In the comprehensive plan, we look at our zoning designations, and we want to make sure that we have a variety of zoning designations within the city. We currently have 68% of the city that's zoned residential and only 3% that's mixed-use employment. In addition, I wanted to point out that those homes that are in the mixed-use employment zoning designation could build a medical office building today. And what this master plan does is it provides a buffer, because within the applicant's plan, they're looking at doing a parking lot in those locations. So the building is really being pulled away from the adjacent homes, and on one side of the block on 15th, that's just going to be a parking lot, so they wouldn't have any big office building adjacent to them. And then on the other side, on the block between 15th and 16th, the building will have to be near Division Street, again pulled away from all adjacent zoning designations. With that, we recommend tentative approval with conditions. There is no additional evidence that was entered into the record since our last hearing.
Ms. Richter?
I think you hear from the applicant at this point.
Okay.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. I'm Russ Reinhardt. I'm the Chief Executive at Providence Willamette Falls, and this is Josh Kohlberg, who is our architect. And so what I really wanted to get into just very briefly is, because Mr. Ray did a wonderful job going through the presentation and what we're asking for, but I want to talk about the why and why we're asking for that. And then Josh will talk about the how we're going to do it, and actually show you some pictures. But really, as you know, Willamette Falls has been in this community for over 60 years, on that site for a little over 50 years, and we continue to grow with the community. And I've been there 24 years, seen significant growth at Willamette Falls, as anybody in the neighborhood knows. But we continue to grow, as does our community. And I've been to Mayor Holliday's State of the City. Oregon City is going to grow. But when I talk about community, Willamette Falls serves a bigger community. We serve Canby, Molalla, Milano, Estacada, West Lane, Gladstone, Beaver Creek, and all areas in between. And as we know, all those areas are growing. So as we look out at that growth, we obviously need to grow with our community and satisfy those needs. Right now I have 2 office buildings, as you know, across the campus, and both those those buildings are 100% occupied. I have zero space in either one of those buildings. Probably at least once or twice a month, I am approached by physicians, services that want to move into the community to serve our community, and I have nowhere to put those. We also do, every 3 years, Providence does a community needs assessment. What are the big needs out in the community? And the number one need is access to primary care. And that's our number one tenant in the new building that wants to come in. They want to expand from 3 docs in our community in Oregon City to actually 7. We have a small outpatient behavioral health unit for child and adolescent in the hospital. They want to expand and bring in nurse practitioners and much more robust service to our community. That was the number 2 community need within the area we serve. So we're growing 2 services that are on the top 2 needs in the community. And then the third one is right now our rehab services, as anybody's been there, is downstairs. They're at capacity. They can't grow. It's actually horrible access for those who have had a total hip or whatever. You have to cross the street, go down the stairs, which is not adequate really for rehab services. They're going to move into the new building also, so they have much better access, much better services. That also then is going to allow us to grow cardiac rehab. We added cardiac rehab about 1.5 years ago, and they're already at capacity, and they're kind of in the back of our rehab services. So unless rehab services moves, cardiac rehab can't grow. It's a new service for Southeast Clackamas County. It was the first here, and it's grown tremendously, serves a great population. So that's the why we're asking for this and why we're asking for these zoning and master plan changes. And again, Josh will talk about the why, because we've met with our community, we've met with our neighbors, the neighborhood association. We understand their concerns. We're trying to alleviate those concerns, but as far as stewardship and the best for our patients as we look at access and so forth, this is the path we've chosen. So with that, Josh.
Thank you, Russ. So my name is Josh Kohlberg, architect with PKA Architects. Briefly, let me just touch on a couple of the items. Laura did a great job with the staff report, but I'll just add a little bit more detail. So to reiterate, in 2012, the approved master plan had a total medical office development square footage of about 50,000 square feet. So again, we've reduced that from 2 buildings at up to 50,000 square feet to 1 building of up to 35,000 square feet. So that's a scale of development has decreased, which also decreases the amount of parking that's required. So there's certain parking minimums and maximums that you have to meet with a building of that size. And again, when you shrink the square footage, you shrink that parking requirement. And I know that parking is a big concern around that area. Again, 2012, we had 2 sites that were identified as potential medical office building locations. And we've now circled in on the west, as Laura had mentioned. When we evaluated the east space, when you look at a 2-story building of up to 35,000 square feet, you have a footprint of around 17.5. The parking lot that's in between Penn Lane and Davis Road, which is currently there, as you can see in that photograph, has about 56 parking spaces. So there's a pretty big shortfall when it comes to the amount of parking that you would need to be able to safely get access for your patients and providers for a building of that size. You could have up to 140 spaces, and that, like I mentioned, that current parking lot only has 56. So in this situation, people would have to be parking across the street or somewhere else on the campus to be able to access that building. The other thing about that east site is if you look at the master plan as a whole, there's a number of approved projects in the master plan that will take away some of the existing campus parking capacity. Projects like the outpatient surgery expansion on the backside of the hospital. They'd also like to expand their birthplace in the future and add more LDRP rooms. And when we do that, or when Providence does that, it will impact some of that existing parking demand. And one of the best places to make up for that will be that property that's there on the east side of Division. So that's one of the areas where they can expand parking demand when some of those other master plan items are taken into account. If you look at the west side, this is a rough outline of the building and the area that's in question. There's 2 access points into the site, which is convenient for vehicular access. All of the parking requirements for the building can be on grade and off street, up to 145 spaces in total. The other thing is that as conditions of the master plan and this project, all of the there'll be quite a few street right-of-way improvements. So along 16th Street, Division Street, and 15th Street, new sidewalks, new bike lanes, new street trees will all be improved as part of this development. This location gives the ability for the safe access of patients, that on-grade, off-street parking, which is really important for the hospital and for the people that they'll be serving. And I believe that is our last slide. Thank you.
Questions? Do we take questions now?
Sure. Yes.
Anything? Okay. Thank you. So now we open the public hearing. Do you have anything else you want to say? Just for full disclosure, I do have to say that all 3 of my kids were born in the birthplace at Willamette Falls. So
I was born there too.
You were.
okay, then I will let me get back to where I need to be. I'm going to open the public hearing. We have apparently 2 folks who wish to testify, Karen Morey and Rita Mills. Ms. Morey?
Karen Morey, I'm a resident of Oregon City, and I'm here to speak to you in favor of the zone change amendment to the comprehensive plan and master plan amendment. I spoke before the Planning Commission, and I figure all of you probably had a lot of homework to do tonight, so just in case you overlooked 2 points, I wanted to reiterate them. I've been a resident of Oregon City my entire life or lived nearby. Myself, my family have all been recipients of services at what is now Providence Willamette Falls Hospital. Too frequently, I've made use of the rehabilitation services. And recently, I've had to take my son there and noticed yet again the difficulty accessing that facility. The hospital is an asset to the community. It makes our community more livable. It makes our community more desirable. But improving access to services is important. And I feel that this would be a great enhancement to what the hospital has to offer. I was chuckling, the existing hospital actually is on the east side of Division Street, which used to divide the county from the city. This will be the first development proposed by the hospital in what was the city. The other thing I wanted to clarify is, although that area is currently represented by the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, it is not a part of the McLaughlin Historic District. It lies in what was called Buena Vista. It's a later development, basically 1920s. There's a few earlier structures designated, none of which are impacted by this development. It's kind of a fun neighborhood because it's small bungalows on very large lots. There's still places where there's only 8 houses to the entire block. There is some infill. A portion of what's going to be impacted by the development is infill. There are a few original bungalows. However, that neighborhood still has a great deal of room for infill. I'm not a developer, but I can see where the infill's gone in and where it hasn't. This is not going to significantly change the character of that neighborhood, but it is going to provide a needed service and an amenity to our community.
Thank you. Ms. Mills, and I have to say, my mom made me promise the next time I saw you to tell her you
Hi.
said hello.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for honoring our request to delay and allow citizen comments.
Sorry, I just want to speak up. She's going to talk on behalf
Yes.
of the McLaughlin Neighborhood
Okay.
Association.
My name is Rita Mills, and I live on Van Buren Street in the McLaughlin neighborhood. We bought this home 58 years ago. I've always been an active member of our community. When we reconstituted the Neighborhood Association in 1996, I became its secretary and later its treasurer. Since we had no money, it'd be an easy job. Well, so much for no money. We got a grant from the county in 2000 to plant trees,
I'm not
and
sure.
worked
This
with.
part is I'm not, excuse me, the Friends of Trees part, I'm not sure if that's in the record.
I just am telling about myself and what I did. I'm introducing me so that you know me.
Keep going.
You're fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, we got a grant and with the county to plant trees and work with Friends of Trees then and in 2015. In a 2-year period, our association planted over 400 trees in this neighborhood. See many of them in bloom right now. In 1965, I became an elementary school secretary for Oregon City Schools. I was a very active member of OSEA, our union. And when I served as our chapter president, and always, I urged our members to shop locally as much as possible. Our employers were the people of Oregon City, and we needed to support local business. We did. I was able to retire from our schools in 1994, and I continue to be grateful to the taxpayers of this area who employed me and intend to always continue to support our city. Providence Willamette Falls Hospital is a part of the McLaughlin neighborhood. At a general meeting of our association, we requested and received a presentation regarding proposed changes to property adjacent to Providence. At this time, we were told that 2 homes would be removed to make a parking lot adjacent to the proposed medical office. I asked if a consideration was given to raise their proposed building 1/2 story and making all needed space for parking beneath the offices. I was told that it had not been a consideration, but was left the impression that this suggestion would be taken into account. This change would allow handicapped and all others to avoid wet weather days and to have immediate elevator access to offices on the above floors. And it would not destroy homes for parking lots. We're most concerned about the destruction of homes in our historic part of town or anywhere in our city. We wish a reconsideration be required to cease the hospital's plan to remove low-income homes that are in short supply in our city and wish them to remain a part of our neighborhood. We feel that the applicant could remain on the east side of Division Street, obtain the extra parking it needs by raising the building similar to its complex at 15th and Washington Streets. This change would allow the applicant to maintain the existing integrity of the McLaughlin neighborhood and preserve affordable housing. The applicant is decreasing the size of the medical office building plan from 50,000 square feet on the east side of Division down to 35,000 square on the west side of Division, and yet taking up more area on the west side. The extra area is only for surface level parking. There are 3 applicable comprehensive plan policies that apply in this regard. One relevant comprehensive plan policy, 10.1.1, maintain the existing residential housing in established older neighborhoods by maintaining existing comprehensive and zoning designations where appropriate. As relevant to the application before the commission, but's been completely unaddressed in the staff report. This policy prohibits the requested zone change and comp plan amendments for the 2 houses on 16th Street. The second relevant comprehensive plan policy reflects our feeling that our lower income neighbors should not have to bear the burden of allowing Providence Willamette Falls to save a small amount of money by tearing down their homes to add surface parking. Goal 10.2, supply of affordable housing. Provide and maintain an adequate supply of affordable housing. 10.2.1, retain affordable housing potential by evaluating and restricting the loss of land reserved or committed to residential use. When considering amendments to the comprehensive planned land use map, ensure that potential loss of affordable housing is replaced. None of the statistics provided by staff reports prove in the slightest that the loss of 6 affordable housing units, these homes on 16th and 15th Street represent, will be replaced. To prove the lack of low-income housing, just keep in mind that many of the families displaced by the recent landslide in our town have not yet found new affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say on the other subject, I agree with Karen totally that we're very blessed to have the hospital facility and have it located in an area that serves a lot of other communities too.
Thank you, Ms. Mills.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak on this matter? Then I will allow for rebuttal from the applicant. Unless I'm doing something wrong again.
You're kind of paranoid there.
You learned once, and now see how it's moving?
Well, I'm just used to Ed. It's hard for me to get used to somebody else over there.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Slyman. I'm with Harper Hoff Peterson Regelis. I'm the applicant's representative. Thank you for the opportunity to hear this application tonight, and we thank staff again for the staff report and the Planning Commission's recommendation of approval with a 6-1 vote in favor of this proposal. As I'm sure you have seen, the application has met all approval criteria. We've submitted the traffic report to show there will be no significant impacts to the transportation system from this proposal. And as you know, future development will be subject to review by the city, so it's not approving any development at this time. It's just setting into place so that Providence can fulfill its mission. I'd like to address some of the points that were raised in opposition to the proposal. Specifically regarding the comprehensive plan policies about housing. First of all, 10.1.1, excuse me, regarding maintaining the existing housing in the city does not mean that the city can never rezone any properties. That's not the intent of this goal. And the city, of course, does rezone properties, and this is no different in that regard. Secondly, the policy regarding affordable housing, that affordable housing should be maintained. Again, this is not Providence's responsibility to maintain affordable housing. These houses are already owned by Providence, so no one is being evicted from their homes. And in fact, Providence is being very generous with its tenants as it goes forward with this development proposal. But these are in Providence's ownership, and in fact, 4 of the 6 properties are already zoned mixed-use employment, meaning that they are now currently allowed to be developed for medical hospital uses by right. They are no longer even considered to be part of the city's housing inventory. It just happens to be that the houses are still in place, and Providence, through its generosity, is retaining those as affordable housing for the time being. And then there's the notion, too, of all development should stay on the east side of Division. Again, as you saw on the zoning map and as I described, mixed-use employment zoning is already on the west side of Division. This is not doing anything that isn't mostly in place already. It's really coming down to 2 properties that need to be rezoned for the site planning considerations that Josh described earlier. There's also the notion that the building could perhaps be taller and the footprint smaller so that less land would be required. I do want to bring to your attention that the minimum FAR in this zone is 0.25. Providence has a minimum FAR of 0.56. It is more than doubling what is already required by the code. So Providence has gone above and beyond, making sure they are providing development in a more intense fashion.
Okay, you got to not speak in acronyms because people out in TV land don't understand that. So what is an FAR?
The floor area ratio, meaning the ratio of development to land. The lower the number, the flatter the development. The higher the number, the more vertical your development becomes. So a 0.25 FAR would mean a much smaller building, a larger building, a smaller building on a larger lot, whereas with the FAR you're getting more development, so you're being more compact with your development and you're maximizing your site area. And so again, Providence is more than doubly exceeding what the city's minimum requirement is already in this zone. So I would recommend and suggest, unless Russ has anything else to offer, this proposal brings about many great benefits for the community, and would ask that you close the public hearing tonight and give tentative approval so we can come back with findings, final findings for the first reading on March 16th.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
So you downsized your comprehensive plan from what it was originally. Master plan, sorry. And why was that?
We downsized the medical office building because we
Okay.
feel this size of office building will serve us well through 2021.
Mhm.
We have, as you saw in our comprehensive plan, we have some other developments that we need to do in big projects, and that's going to carry us through this master plan. So we didn't feel, in this time frame, we're not going to build 2 medical office buildings, and this will get us through the next 5 to 10 years.
So you're already being conservative with your building and, okay, thank you.
So, and I almost broke my own rule. How much bigger are you making the central utility building, Cub?
The central utility plant won't be that much bigger. We don't have a central plant right now. As part of our master plan, we have a very dispersed system that's not redundant.
Well, you show a Cub building on the back side of the of the place.
I can chime in.
No, he's got to be at a microphone.
Sorry. So, question related to the central utility plant. Again, this is Josh Kohlberg. The central utility plant would not serve any of the medical office building's needs.
That part's not in the record.
Oh.
The size is in the record, though.
Oh, the size. So
And
this
the
is
location.
the size and location
Sorry.
would not have any change or effect based on the medical office building.
Thank you. Anything else?
I was curious about, you just said 2021 is kind of your master plan right now?
That's when it expires, and that will remain the same with this amendment.
Okay, so that gives us 5 years or so, right? My concern is that we've got, because I heard that there was going to be 3 homes removed. Regardless of ownership, they're still affordable homes, right? And now I hear it's 6. And that's correct, right?
6 properties and 5 homes.
5 homes to be removed.
Yes.
Okay.
2 of those homes are subject to the rezone. The others are already in the mixed-use employment zoning.
They're still what we call affordable homes, though. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, if we're kind of setting a precedent here of removing affordable homes, and then in 2021 we're going to have another 5-year plan. Is it looking like we're going to be removing more homes? See, I hate to set the precedent here, saying it's okay to do this. What's the future look like? What's the next expansion? I guess is where I'm going at with this, Russ. So
Is that really a relevant question to this particular proceeding?
Relevant if it's a question that he has.
Okay.
I think
All right. I just wanted to make sure we weren't.
I think that it's
Hey,
difficult.
you're the one getting in trouble tonight, not me.
I don't think there'd be anything in the record to talk about the plans past 2021.
I could answer the question
is.
only that a precedent can only be set if it still meets the approval criteria. So any expansion, any additional development would have to come back for a master plan review, would have to meet all applicable approval criteria through a public process. So there's no precedent per se because the approval criteria would hold in the findings that need to be made.
Well, I mean, the precedent would be that we are taking 5 affordable homes out for a parking lot. And, who's to say the next developer, whoever down the street or whatever, says, well, you allowed it there, why can't I do that? So that's what I'm worried
It's
about.
appropriately zoned already. They could come in, someone else could come in today, as Laura explained, and redevelop those without any planning commission or city commission approval. So there is no precedent in that regard because it's allowed right now. It happens to be, since Providence has a master plan, because they're a good community partner, they are sharing their plans with you and developing long-term plans so you have some assurances. But if those were not owned by Providence, someone could come in today and redevelop them without regard for what the current use is.
Okay.
I believe, don't we have a work session planned for affordable housing coming up at some point in time? I thought that was kind of on the queue. Just a work session for a different time specifically for affordable housing to talk about that. Wasn't that on our queue? For
It was
a work
suggested.
session? It was suggested, okay.
And I think we determined that we were going to wait until the end of the legislative session because some things are planning on coming out of that before. Okay, so my only question is, and I'm going to ask Laura first, was there any mention of the actual rents of those homes in the record?
There are mention of the rents of the homes that are owned by Providence.
And so can I ask what the average monthly rent is for one of those houses? Is that?
I don't know that. There is testimony before the Planning Commission, the hospital may, regarding the payment of an additional month's rent to the property owner, and I forgot what that number was.
We didn't specify a number, just that we would.
So,
if you're going to speak, you got to come to the microphone.
So we generally talked about the rate of the cost of the house, if you want to, of the Providence-owned homes.
Hi, I'm Renee King with Providence Willamette Falls Medical Center. We didn't talk about a specific dollar amount rent. We just mentioned that we would give us an amount equal to 1 month's rent for each tenant to help them with moving costs down the road. But we didn't specify what that dollar amount is. I'm assuming all the houses have different dollar amounts.
So of the 3 homes that Providence owns now and is in the MEC zoning, are those occupied?
Some are occupied, some are not occupied.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, then have we closed the public hearing? I don't think we have. So at this point, I'm going to close the public hearing. And what's the pleasure of the commission?
Having attended several community meetings, I feel that the hospital's been very responsive to the concerns that they've raised. Parking was one of the big ones. Cut-through traffic was another one. And medical services are something that they've clearly investigated and provide a great service to the community. Their design is less than what they originally were approved for, so less impact. The buffering of the parking lots with the neighboring houses is a great benefit. I think that was one of the issues that community members were concerned about. And the fact that there's relatively few traffic impacts based on the traffic study was really impressive. So I think it's a good development. I'd support it.
Well, you know what comes next, right?
Is that a motion?
Well,
Yeah.
other people might comment.
No, I just, Willamette Falls is an asset to this community, and I know this new office building is going to be more jobs coming to the community. So that's a bonus. Like I say, my only reservation, having gone through the landslide issue recently and trying to relocate 51 families and some kind of housing, kind of brought a lot of this to the forefront here. So that's my only reservation, is the loss of housing.
Well, and to counter that, we do have 250 units of housing coming in the Cove project sometime in the next 18 months. So
let's make that affordable housing. let me qualify that.
I'm sure some of that is going to be affordable, isn't it?
I don't think so.
Do we not have any? Okay. Well, I mean,
no.
Again, affordable is sort of like sustainable. What does that really mean?
Is it getting that late? Come on.
Well, no, but in reality, what's affordable to one person is not necessarily affordable to the next. Yeah. I'm sure Russ can afford a much bigger house than I can. So, Commissioner Smith, I apologize.
So I will echo what has already been said. I guess what I'm weighing is the same issue in terms of the houses. I understand that's the houses that are owned by Providence and the current zoning. But I think for this project and other projects that are coming in the future of the city, that that's a really broad question. At which point do we draw a line where these projects are encroaching into neighborhoods? And I think that's, you know, definitely something we have to weigh. We want to see projects like this, but we also don't want to lose the identity of a neighborhood. We don't also want to lose the history of a neighborhood. Now, this isn't a historic neighborhood per se, but it does, you know, affect that neighborhood. And even saying, you know, what is existing now. If a building's built there, that's fine. But we're now being asked to change the zoning for another piece, and you know, that just, you know, slowly goes. We know that the city's going to continue to grow, and 2021 is not very far out. So what do we do then? And I think that is a consistent message that we are hearing from McLaughlin neighborhood, not just on this project, but on the public works side. So it's a broader question, obviously, for the city on how we weigh those two things, encouraging these projects to be developed in the city, but also how to balance that with the character of those neighborhoods. And I think it's something that needs to be talked about. And so I have really no problem with building, and, you know, of course, we don't have any say in stopping Providence from in terms of using that zoning and that's already currently exists, but we do have a say in how we start changing it as we go forward. And so that's a tough call. Where do we once we go over, and we weren't a part of the decision in making the expansion beyond Division Street. Maybe that should have never happened. I don't know. But now we've gone over Division Street, and at what point do we stop in that neighborhood? And I think it's a valid question from the neighbors. And we don't necessarily have an answer to that.
I do have one thought, and it may not even be feasible, and some houses may not be worth saving, but it is possible to move them. And in that neighborhood, since I live there, I know that there's fairly large lots and there's some undeveloped lots, and, you know, if people wanted to, you could move a house and your affordable house is saved and the character of that house is saved in the neighborhood, and you're not losing necessarily. But I wouldn't want to tell the hospital how to do their business.
Absolutely.
So on the other side of the scale, we have not just a single employer, but a conglomeration of employers on this site. And understanding the geographical boundaries we're all confined in, whether it's the urban growth boundary or the city limits or whatever the case may be, I have to weigh the loss of 5 houses with the potential loss of an entire compound. If we make it too expensive or too difficult, it's not unheard of for a hospital to close, for somebody to build a new facility somewhere else that isn't under the same kinds of constraints that they might be here. So we have to, you know, it's all a balancing act. And sometimes we'll look back on things we did 25 years ago, and I have done that and said, you know, that was a pretty stupid thing to do when I did it. But so I think we just have to be very careful that and I think we are careful about looking at things and agonizing over things, you know, just like the Buena Vista house and that kind of thing. But I don't think we can afford to say no to this particular thing. Maybe we do need to look at how we're going to, some method of preserving those houses themselves, not necessarily where they're at, but some method of doing that if they're certainly if they're worth saving. It's hard to say. Some houses in that, especially in that neighborhood and the McLaughlin neighborhood, by the time you get them off their foundations, there's almost no value left. So
if there's a foundation.
Well, that's the point too. Yeah, if there's a foundation. So I am in support of this project, and I'm waiting for a motion, one way or the other.
Move to approve 16-104 Providence Willamette Falls Medical Center, zone change 1504, zone change PZ 1502, amendment to the comprehensive plan, and CP 15-02 master plan amendment. Did I do that right?
It'll be a tentative approval.
Tentative approval
Okay.
of.
Returning with findings on March 16th.
I second.
Moved by Commissioner Mengelberg, seconded by Commissioner Pauly. Sorry. Is there any further discussion? Then can we have the first reading? This is first reading, right?
No, this is tentative
Tentative.
approval. We will come back with an ordinance.
So you don't need to do anything else?
Just a vote.
Okay. Call the roll.
Commissioner Shaw?
I'm going to vote yes with reservations.
There's no button for that.
I know there is. That's why I had to verbally mention that. I have reservations about our affordable housing issue here.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Polly?
I, with affordable housing, is going to come back sometime for us to talk. It's a different issue.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. Okay, so we are at this time in the meeting where we have 4 minutes left until we're up against our self-imposed timeline. We have two.
Wow, time flies.
We have one more public hearing on the Beaver Creek Road concept plan. I would anticipate that would take some time. So the question is, do we want to? I'm not sure we could get through it even if we go to our maximum time of 11 o'clock. So the question is, do you want to exceed our timeline just to handle the city manager's employment agreement and the consent agenda and communications, or do you want to try to do the Beaver Creek Road concept plan tonight?
I have some thoughts.
Think away.
We have already continued the Beaver Creek Road concept plan.
I was afraid you were going to say
I think for everybody's use of time and tribulation over this, I think we need to go forward with it and not continue it once again.
I agree.
Agreed.
Oh, crap.
It does need to be unanimous, so this is a big
It
vote.
does.
Yes, that's part of the policy.
Ooh,
Yeah.
ooh.
What about the library update? I have
You want to do that now?
No.
I don't know. There was a time when I was on the commission for, earlier that, we went way later, so I'm fine.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we've got to have at least one of these this year. Remember that time we went to midnight?
You're going to be the lone.
That's usually when bad decisions get made, when you go till midnight.
I know.
Sometimes they're made earlier.
So if we did,
Highly
if we
unlikely.
did continue it, it would be the very next meeting, or is there room on the agenda at the next meeting? How does that look for the Beaver Creek Road concept plan? Is there
Yeah, I
room on
mean,
the
we'll be
agenda?
bringing back the two hearings that you heard tonight, but those should be relatively much quicker than tonight. You do have planning commissioners who did come out specifically to testify tonight, as well as a representative from ODOT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I haven't said yes yet.
Isn't it okay? Yes.
If we're going to do that, then I would want to deal with a couple of things. Well, I'd want to get I'd want to do the vote on the city manager's employment agreement before we go into that public hearing.
Move to approve.
Second.
So I'm okay with moving forward, but we cannot by policy go past 11 o'clock. So as we're going to go forward from there. So we have a motion for so the city manager's employment agreement. The reason this is back up before us is because at the last meeting where we approved the city manager's employment agreement, 2 of our members were absent, and we wanted to make sure that everyone knew that this was a unanimous vote. So Commissioner Mengelberg has moved, and Commissioner Pauly has seconded to approve the city manager's employment agreement. Is there any further discussion?
Nope.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Pauly?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
There we go.
Try not to start at the beginning.
Back in 2005.
Through the Planning Commission, and they made a recommendation for you tonight to consider. And so I will turn it over to Pete Walter to give the staff presentation on this.
Okay. We're coming out of a series of continuations, so you've all familiarized yourself with our staff report and our work session that we presented back in November. I'm going to begin with our recommendation that's in the staff report. We're recommending that City Commission open the public hearing, take testimony for the readoption, close the public record portion of the hearing, and make a tentative oral decision tonight. The matter will be continued to March 16th, where we will return with final written findings and an ordinance for introduction. Planning Commission, after 6 meetings, 4 of which were public hearings, voted unanimously to recommend the readoption of the Beaver Creek Road Concept Plan, planning file LE 1501, to the City Commission tonight. You're familiar with the plan area. The North Employment Campus area is the Title IV industrial employment land part of it. It's an area that is planned to be a mixed-use employment land and residential area. It's approximately 400 acres, and parts of it must be concept planned before any annexation can take place pursuant to Metro rules, Title IV and Title 11. Sorry. Make sure this is a recap of the 2006 and 2007 process of public involvement. There's a Citizens Advisory Committee, a Technical Advisory Committee, numerous meetings, several open houses, a lot of employment lands discussion with Metro. The hybrid plan that was finally adopted by the Planning Commission and City Commission reflected a lot of input from the community, the market focus group, sustainability focus group, and after 4 Planning Commission hearings and 10 City Commission hearings, that was adopted and appealed to LUBA. Today, after going back to the groups that you see listed here, we're bringing this back for readoption. We've had 4 Planning Commission hearings. The acreage is reflected here on the map. It's about 453 gross acres. 150 of that is employment campus, but we also have some mixed use areas in here, a Main Street area, and a significant amount of this land will be within proximity to the high school and the college and the Beaver Creek Road corridor. So it's intended to be a transit-supportive and walkable community. The job analysis that was done through this process indicated that the capacity for 5,000 jobs in this area and approximately 1,000 housing units. The Planning Commission is satisfied that all of the issues that were raised through the initial hearings here have been addressed in the record, subject to the concerns that are detailed in their memorandum. So they prepared a memorandum to the City Commission. And the paramount concern is with respect to transportation. No surprise there. And in the memorandum, we talk about the need to go through the process of adopting an alternative mobility set of standards, which you've heard about through other processes as well. That's on track to be tackled this year, and we'll be coming back before the Planning Commission and the City Commission with that as a legislative process. Planning Commission wanted to emphasize the need to provide an alternative way for people to get around, and they've recommended a robust process of engaging TriMet to look at expanding public transportation within this area and also to the whole of Oregon City. So we heard presentations from TriMet representatives at the last Planning Commission hearing. Planning Commission is satisfied that there's a clear agreement amongst us as agencies to move forward and look at that. And we also had significant testimony about the Holly Lane part of the plan. Part of the extension of Holly Lane goes through the concept plan. There is a portion of Holly Lane which is not in the Oregon City urban growth boundary and could potentially be affected by transportation trips that are generated from the concept plan area. That is something that Planning Commission recommends we continue to work with the county on with respect to joint planning, regional planning for improvements in that area. That's something that's outlined in our transportation system plan already. Some of the other recommendations for consideration are, as we move forward with implementation of zoning to implement this plan after it's adopted, to look at our cottage manufacturing and land use and zoning, since there is a part of the plan that talks about the need to have home occupations that are a little more flexible and allow for certain types of manufacturing, that sort of thing. That's not something we're going to be adopting tonight or with this concept plan, but it will be something that we'll be bringing back as a zoning issue. And Goal 5, Cultural and Historic Resources issue, we've already got the findings from the Planning Commission in there with respect to how any potential for cultural or historic artifacts or houses to be added to the city's inventory would be if there's an inventory done in this area, and the findings for the concept plan reflect that. They would be added to any inventory if it's done in the future through our standard process. We've made findings for Goal 5 compliance, for natural resources, for cultural and historic resources and open space areas. That's all been updated. So the Planning Commission found that the concept plan meets the requirements of the statewide land use goals, Metro Title 11, Metro Title 4, and the Oregon City Comprehensive Plan. And as Tony mentioned, our comprehensive plan includes our transportation system plan from 2013, took this area into account. Our public facilities master plans, water, sewer, and stormwater, all take this area into account already. So it is in compliance with our public facilities goals and all of the statewide and metro requirements. And that is the end of my PowerPoint. If you have any specific questions about the staff report, I would be happy to answer those.
Can you talk a little bit about the mixed-use housing zones? What kinds of uses would you anticipate being in them?
Well, they are mixed-use areas, different densities. We haven't started to look at the zoning for that area yet, but we anticipate that there would be an allowance for both neighborhood-level commercial, mixed-use apartments potentially, There'll be some single-family detached, single-family attached housing use primarily, but we need to look at that in much more detail as we move forward with the zoning implementation. It's a little too early to say. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, once again, our hats off to the staff and the Planning Commission. I'll use a phrase that after watching the Planning Commission go through this on TV the other night, Planning Commissioner McGriff said that, the Planning Commission's done the heavy lifting on this, and I will totally agree with her. That having been on Planning Commission for a couple years, I know Commissioner Mildenberg's been on planning, and I've been at midnight meetings before, just like these folks went through. And Chair Kidwell, great job on your part there too. So, my thoughts are still on transportation, but this is a tentative plan. It's a concept plan that I know that we are going to be revisiting periodically by staff, I understand. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
So this is a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have an opportunity to comment a little bit later.
Yes.
So for now, I will open the public hearing. And our first speakers are our esteemed Planning Commission Chairman, Charles Kidwell, and Planning Commissioner Denise McGriff. So before you guys start talking, I want to say that we couldn't do this job without you guys doing your job.
Yes, thank you.
And while Ms. McGriff and I have been on opposite sides of many issues, I have a great amount of respect for the amount of time you have spent inside the planning community, both here in Oregon City and in the city of Portland, and know that you know this stuff inside out and upside down and backwards. And so I'm confident that any challenges that might come up to this, I think you guys have probably already visited. So thanks again for both of your service.
Thank you for the compliment, although as a professional land use planner, we always have things to learn. And I appreciate working with our staff because we work with each other. But we were going to have some T-shirts printed up for you that said, "We do the heavy lifting so you don't have to." But we decided not to wear those tonight.
I know a place where you can get those T-shirts done.
Good. You can send that to me.
There we go.
Thank you. Charles Kidwell, and Chair of the Planning Commission, and Denise McGriff, Vice Chair of the Planning Commission. Thank you for hearing us this evening.
Thank you.
Mayor Holliday and City Commissioners, thank you for the kind words. And we were elected by consensus of the Planning Commission to come and just share a few thoughts with you. This was a particular issue that, as a commission, we didn't feel like we just wanted to pass it on to you without a little bit of commentary. Mm-hmm. So with the assistance of Mr. Walters, we prepared a memorandum which you have in your packet. And I wanted to take a few moments just to read a few of the what I would consider important points. And Denise and I are going to do a little tag team effort here. We're not talking about mud wrestling. We're just talking about giving you the information. There were a few areas that we both had specific concerns about that we wanted to share with you. There was a lengthy, detailed process that the Planning Commission went through in reviewing this reconsideration of the concept plan and readoption of that. And through that, there was quite a bit of public testimony, and we believe that the Beaver Creek Road Concept Plan readoption strikes a balance between achieving the community's vision for a complete and sustainable community with opportunities for Oregon City residents to live and work. And we do fully endorse the adoption of this plan, but we have several points that we wanted to bring to your attention that we believe warrant special ongoing consideration. And One of those is the transportation issues, especially related to alternative mobility targets and TriMet service in Holly Lane. We heard testimony from ODOT officials in support of the planning process for the Beaver Creek Road Concept Plan and urged the City Commission to follow through with adoption of the alternative mobility standards as soon as staff is able to prepare them. And these targets must be adopted prior to any rezoning of lands within the concept area. Denise?
That was, if you saw the meetings, we spent quite a bit of time on this. We're very concerned basically that there is a large amount of congestion in this particular area, particularly as you know, the intersection of 213 and Beaver Creek. We also know that a lot of that traffic is not generated from within Oregon City. It comes in Oregon City, out of Oregon City, and goes to parts unknown. But we still feel really responsible about making sure that we have good land use planning with regard to Oregon City's comp plan, the Metro Functional Regional Plan. So it's really imperative that we work, whether we have to drag them kicking and screaming Clackamas County to get some of this work done. Clackamas County, the state, and Metro. The biggest issue I think that we heard about all of this with regard to traffic and transportation was Holly Lane. And I know many of you have been on Holly Lane, maybe not lately, but we are very concerned about Holly Lane. It is severely constrained, and it is very unlikely that in any near future of our lifetimes that the county is going to have any money or that we would have sufficient money to make it a minor arterial. We would like to see, at the very least, that we look at putting either amending the TSP to remove a portion of Holly Lane, or at least putting an asterisk so that we know that it's a constrained facility and that it's going to take a lot more than what we currently have right now to try to deal with that situation. We kind of feel that we cannot in good conscience recommend that we add more trips to that in its current configuration and construction.
One of the commissioners had I thought was humorous, although I'm not sure it was intended to be humorous, suggestion that we institute a toll gate at the entrance to Oregon City at both ends to deal with the notion that Commissioner McGriff has raised, that a significant portion of the traffic that we're dealing with at these key intersections in Oregon City come from outside of Oregon City. And so
you say pay to get in and you have to pay to get out too?
Well, not necessarily. We might as well get them both ways.
You've been talking to Parnell back there?
But from a serious point of view, I think that it just emphasizes the need to expand our conversation beyond the boundaries of Oregon City. And really, we talk about Holly Lane, but it's beyond Holly Lane to get the county involved in this conversation, because our TSP needs to dovetail with their TSP. But beyond that, in the alternative mobility standards, a key component of that is the TriMet component of mass transit. And without an adequate bus system, there is not a realistic alternative for mobility. Very few people are going to be able to walk from their where they live to work, and bicycle riding in Oregon City is not very realistic for most people. So the bus is really the best and most realistic option. We had a meeting and a presentation on February 22nd where TriMet, a representative, came and we had a conversation with them and explained our concerns. What we're suggesting that the city strongly is encouraged to pursue a tangible set of service improvements with TriMet, and that they would, we're recommending that some sort of partnership with TriMet be considered, and possibly implemented. We recommended to TriMet that they consider smaller shuttle buses within the boundaries of Oregon City to help bridge the gap between people getting from home to the main transit lines. And so I think that's an important component of that alternative mobility. So the Planning Commission is strongly recommending two parts to implement the alternative mobility standards. One is to work with the county, and the second is to work with TriMet. And that put together, we believe, will help address the transportation considerations of this concept plan.
The last point that we want to raise is dealing with the Goal 5 analysis. Staff did a very good job of identifying all of the components of that. So Goal 5 is not just historic and cultural resources, it's open space, it's scenic views, and we have such a great opportunity, particularly in the area where it says environmentally sensitive resource area, to have some really great opportunities there for either open spaces, natural areas, maybe even some permanent parks. So that is something that we hope to take a look at in the future as those come in and work with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee to make sure that those resources are identified. The other thing that was done very well is that although there were not any acknowledged or recognized Goal 5 resources in the county inventory, it's been brought to our attention that there's a possibility that the Oregon City Golf Club clubhouse has some significance, and so that's something we'll be looking at in the future, and we hope to be able to add items as they come up from either the public or the county staff or city staff identifying them, so we can do some inventories down there as well. But all in all, the Goal 5 resources we feel have been very adequately and more than adequately addressed, so that we have hit every single point. So in summary,
well, I think the Planning Commission is in full agreement that there are some considerations that need to be addressed, and primarily with the transportation issues, and some of the environmental concerns need to be looked at. But in the overall view, we're very confident that this readoption of the Beaver Creek Road Plan should be considered and approved by the City Commission, and we recommend that.
Thank you.
we also wanted to let you know that as you know, we had a lot of meetings. We also really appreciated all of the information that was brought in by the public. There was a lot to go through, but we managed to get through it, and it's much appreciated. So even though some of those meetings were long, it's still part of the process, and particularly the people, even the people in the county brought in stuff for us. So we read it all, we looked at it all. So if you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer them.
For now, let's move on to our other folks, and if we have questions during our deliberation, we'll call you back up.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next, I have John Mackler from ODOT and Elizabeth Grazer Lindsay. Mr. Mackler?
Nice to see you again, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. This feels like a reprise of my double appearance at the Planning Commission a few weeks ago. The trip cap was easy. This one's a little trickier. The Planning Commissioners have already identified the importance of the transportation issues. I don't disagree. Again, my role here is I'm not objecting. I'm comfortable with the way going forward. I want to make sure that you're clear on the issue and the way that ODOT sees it. There's a congestion problem at 213 in Beaver Creek. The transportation system plan identified the opportunity to do what we call a refinement plan, which is when you can't solve a problem within the time and budget available in the development of the TSP, you punt and you say we'll come back and we'll focus on that issue. I've been told there's about 75 such refinement plans in the metropolitan area. What appeals to me, and really the reason that I'm spending my evening with you, is that Oregon City's the first one that's moving on it. And it's a risk to my department to have these refinement plans out there, and it represents a step in the right direction to have a jurisdiction complete to perform that refinement plan and to address the issue, to close that question. So I'm encouraged that the city is going to tackle this problem, to develop the refinement plan, and to close the books on it. I want to see it done well. I want to see it done right. They've been welcoming for the department, for my staff, to help them scope that study appropriately. That's a really critical step. If we were jumping ahead to the implementation, to the zoning and the comp plan designations, I would have concerns. But it's not time for that. It's time to do this refinement plan. It's time to look at this intersection, to figure out what can be done, and then address those other questions in due time. I could give you an entire academic lecture on some slightly different terms here, so I won't do it. I just want to make sure you understand that there are different terms. There is a standard, and right now what we have on the books, we refer to mobility standards. So there's a requirement to have a mobility standard. There is also work afoot in the state to come up with other standards, so that in addition to looking at mobility, you could look at things like safety, and you could evaluate decisions. Maybe in addition to or instead of mobility, you could look at something like safety. So that would be an alternative performance measure. We're talking about alternative mobility standards. So maybe there are other ways to measure mobility other than this horrific volume to capacity ratio, which is good at some things and not good at others. So one of the things that you'll hear about as this refinement plan moves forward is maybe there are other ways to measure congestion, the time to get from point A to point B, whether or not the travel is reliable. Is it okay? Maybe it's going to get slower because your area is going to develop, but maybe it's going to become much less reliable. Today it takes 10 minutes, but tomorrow it takes 45. Businesses have a hard time operating when you don't know how long it's going to take. You can regret that it takes longer, but you can plan for it if it's consistent. So there are lots of ways to measure mobility. So your staff is going to have the opportunity to explore those. And in the refinement plan, you'll get to look at whether the way that the city is addressing the congestion at Beaver Creek and 213 is satisfactory. Have you pulled out all the tools in the toolbox? This is an exercise that ODOT welcomes and is encouraged to see the city tackling. We look forward to partnering with your staff on that and then engaging in the conversation that follows based on what happens. But the key thing is that this approach of developing the refinement plan is the right next step, and then we'll be able to address implementation once we get there. So ODOT is satisfied with this approach. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. If you want the lecture,
we'll pass.
You'll pass tonight, but I'm available.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
Good information.
Appreciate it. Thank
Just
you.
to say, to appreciate your coming out and
Absolutely.
offering your expert testimony on
Yeah.
all of these projects and staying until 10:30. It's really helpful.
Yeah.
Welcome. I actually have one question. So let's assume that money was no object. Okay?
Here we go,
How
the
would you-
lottery.
How would you fix that intersection?
No, thank you. I think I wouldn't hazard to guess. I know that your transportation system plan previously had a grade separated interchange, and we very deliberately removed that grade separated interchange is unrealistic, and so that's the position.
Unrealistic financially is what you're saying.
Yes. But I also think that there are, maybe you've heard the phrase that you can't build your way out of congestion. I don't think that adding the capacity in that way would be a silver bullet, would solve your problems. You've heard testimony about the through traffic from other jurisdictions. We would still be grappling with that or different problems. And this is something we're facing. I caution people not to think that if they had the money, they could solve it. Portland, if they had the money, would double deck the Banfield and dig a tunnel for I-5. I don't know.
No, they just buy a whole bunch more trains.
I'm not sure, but I caution them. You don't want to say we can't double deck the Banfield because of money. There are other good reasons why you wouldn't want to double deck the Banfield. That would come with its own problems as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Scrooge Lindsay.
My testimony is to suggest you not reapprove the Beaver Creek Road concept plan. The city needs jobs, but this plan converts land that were obtained for family wage jobs primarily into housing and low-wage service jobs. Unfortunately, the staff continues to express satisfaction with low acreage yields from the early urban growth boundary expansion, which LUBA already discounted as not satisfying Title IV. The city's misuse of 10-year-old studies does not constitute an adequate factual base that's required by Goal 2. The public has not been happy with this plan and opposes how it will decrease their livability and compete with existing neighborhoods for infrastructure such as roads, sewer, water, schools, and emergency services. The abbreviated readoption process ensured that citizens could not be involved in all phases of the planning. Community conditions such as failing sewer, low water pressure, and congested and failing roads counterindicate this concept plan, particularly in the absence of evidence that these conditions can be overcome or that sufficient funds can be obtained from any source to overcome them. On the contrary, evidence in the record and in the city's master plans and in the LUBA appeal indicate that funds cannot be obtained and that the problems will persist and degrade living conditions in Oregon City. The TSP shows that the Beaver Creek Road 213 intersection is exceptionally dangerous with the level of accidents when the city flags intersections that are over 1, with the units being MEV. So we have an extremely high accident rate there, and we had death occurring in 2011 and earlier. The decade-old traffic analysis depended on an interchange, and the 213 transportation system plan depended on 50% of the trips being by alternate modes. The old analysis is obsolete, and the new analysis hasn't happened on how to get the trips switched over to other modes. The concept plan anticipated routing a very major amount of the traffic from this concept plan by Holly Lane, because Beaver Creek Road was to remain as 3 lanes and it's already full, and we have the failing intersection, so it's supposed to go around this by Holly Lane. But we heard from the Planning Commission tonight that Holly Lane won't be fixed, and the TSP shows that too. It puts it decades out for the funding ever to come. So here we have a plan that's dependent on a side trip that doesn't exist. We also have the problem that the water consideration that was done is outdated by 10 years, because that's when the analysis was done, and the same with the sewer analysis is a 10-year-old analysis. Since that happened, we found out that there's inadequate water pressure on Beaver Creek Road and not enough funds to put in the reservoir needed to service this plan.
Are you almost finished?
There's one more sentence. Emergency services are not going to be able to service this area within good response times when Beaver Creek Road is completely clogged up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Paul Edgar.
Thank you.
Hi, Paul.
Again. Yes, it has to be state goals. And the transportation planning and all of the numbers and everything, as has been testified, are 10 years old. The method that was when they were originally doing it, again, let me reiterate, was with an overpass over 213. That doesn't exist. It makes all of that planning associated with transportation just mocks nix, old German term. No, it doesn't count. And what really we need to have to make sense is a transportation plan, a real one. And to move ahead and even approve this or advance it with what we have is just inadequate. It's not right. I just would hope that we all, I made a comment to Laurel the other day that I'd love to be working in a team, solving a problem, and not being part of some other team. And I feel like that what we have is we're moving around and not really, we're allowing interest to pull us to solve this thing when we're not ready. And we should be all working together, trying to come up with a solution. And right now, we don't have the right facts, we don't have the right information. And I could bore you, but the people have said a lot of things, and I agree with most of what the testimony is. I've spent a lot of time trying to work with ODOT. I probably have spent more time trying to educate myself, not only at Portland State in transportation studies and urban planning studies, than most any of us. And I do that because I care. And I have my facts right. And I normally, I have the Metro functional plan here, and I read it. And we're not in compliance with it. And that's the overriding plans that we should be in compliance with. I just think we have more work to do. I would hope that we would be working together to get the job done right. And I don't think we're ready to do it. And my recommendation is we defer this out and take a good look at the transportation issues and make sure we get it done right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else wishing to testify? Then I will close the public hearing. It's your pleasure, commissioners. Comments?
I have a whole bunch to say, but I can wait until somebody want to go first.
I say go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner Pauly.
Okay. I'm just going to start kind of with the big picture and narrow down from what I see. A thought, our city has requirements. With development comes improvements in infrastructure that we all benefit from. Sidewalks, connectors, signals, traffic calming, aesthetics, tax space, etc. The transportation issues are something that we need to work out over time and with specifics, and we do need money. I've met with TriMet. We've been trying to work with TriMet to get better transit out there to help that intersection as well. With the Beaver Creek concept plan and the high school out there and the college, hopefully that'll be enough leverage to actually get something out there. So part of it is really creating that demand to make action happen. Until we have that demand to create that action and get the tax base and get the money to do it, nothing's going to happen. It's going to stay status quo. I think it's great that ODOT is coming to the table, giving us a tool with this refinement plan to look outside the box and say, what can we do with the resources we have? How can we think smarter? Not more expensive necessarily, but smarter, and make this a workable situation. Right now we have the college out there, the high school out there. We have a technical school now, a high school case in Oregon City, and we've had this concept plan to try to bring jobs in, to try to use the existing resources of the college and the high school for training, to have something close in that doesn't require a lot of travel, where you can kind of live, work. Campaign slogan. There's a plug for you.
Kind of catchy, isn't it?
It is kind of catchy.
Hopefully it
And
isn't deadly.
we have this opportunity to finally realize this plan. So So again, it's a plan, and as we trickle down and narrow down the process and actually go through the planning process, all of those particulars will be worked out. They're required to. There's studies are required to be done, and that will happen. So we got to start with that big picture, and the Planning Commission has done a great job of bringing up concerns and going through that. So I thank you for that.
Commissioner Mayberg?
Oregon City needs employment land. It really has very little inventory right now. And if it hopes to be a complete community where people can work here and live here, we need to move on this. And we've had so many hearings, we've had a decade working on this idea. It's time to move it forward. And the concept is that you have employment land, you've got housing, you've got retail, you've got the college there. In theory, it could be a self-contained little area that is not generating a lot of internal trips. Yes, people might be coming into it, but it might be possible to not be this traffic nightmare if it's planned well. And clearly there's been a lot of thought into developing this plan and having it be that way. So I also want to thank the Planning Commission for their thorough work. It has to have been a lot of difficult decisions to make, but really appreciate their recommendation and coming here tonight to share their perspective with us, and I would vote to support this.
Anybody else? What they
my
said?
fellow commissioners said it succinctly.
Girl power.
From now on, we're going to let them go first.
You should.
And but
That's
there's
sexist, by the way.
there are two very important projects in this city. Number one, obviously, is the Legacy project, but number two is this Beaver Creek concept plan. When we look at the future for employment lands and mixed-use housing and the it is late, but the marriage up there of the college and the high school and what these possible manufacturing positions might be opened up there, that there's going to be a nice little continuity of things up there, and I do believe that I'm being optimistic that the transportation issues might be minimized by that. And we forget that we have the Myers Road extension going to happen that's going to also help with that. And so it's time to move the needle on this and move this ahead. We could stretch this out, stretch it out, but it's at some point in time we got to say, let's go. And this is it.
Okay.
What?
Sorry.
She's reading his mail. Sorry.
So, that's fine. After listening to the public comments, and especially from our planning chair and commissioner, I am astounded that someone can come say that we had some sort of an abbreviated process. I don't know if you consider 11 years abbreviated. I'm not sure what that means. These are the kinds of things that a majority of us were elected to do, and it is impossible to please everybody all the time. And sometimes we have to do things that may not necessarily be terribly popular to make things work. And as far as I can see, there hasn't been a large outpouring of dissent on this plan. You didn't get 400 people in a room screaming and yelling with pitchforks and tar pits to say that they didn't want to do this. So it seems to me that we've done the hard work. Let's get it done. Let's move forward.
Well, the Planning Commission did the hard work.
Well, absolutely, and I said that up front.
And
they did the heavy lifting.
I would never sit on the Planning Commission. I don't have the patience for it. So, I'll entertain a motion.
I move for a tentative oral decision. Affirmative.
Sorry.
Moved by Commissioner Pauly, seconded by Commissioner Smith. What does that mean?
I'm not sure what the motion was.
A tentative oral decision?
Well, no, a tentative oral decision of what?
The readoption of the Beaver Creek Road concept plan.
There.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
We're just checking on you over there to see if you're.
Okay.
If I'm still awake.
Is there any further discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Polly?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye.
Yes.
So,
We will return on the 6th.
I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay. Moved by Shaw, seconded by Smith. Is anybody want to pull anything?
No.
And call the roll.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Polly?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. So we're on to communications. We have 10 minutes.
10 minutes and library report.
One,
No, we have 10 minutes.
Mr. Lewis will give the fastest update you guys have ever seen.
Real quick, emergency management training. The Clackamas County Office of Emergency Management is offering elected officials and appointed officials training on emergency management. I know you are
Seems like we just
well-versed
did some
group.
OJT on that.
Some of you did, some of you didn't. So I think this is going to be great training, and I think there's going to be other elected from around the county. I think it'd be a good opportunity to kind of have that interface with folks with that particular topic in mind. So it's Monday, March 28th. We'll send this out. It's from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. I didn't look at our city commission calendar, but I'm hoping that's not going to interfere with anything else you have on the calendar. Milwaukee City Hall. So we'll send that out to you, and again, I encourage you. We've been doing we're planning to do more and more training with the Cascadia event. There's a lot of focus around the region on emergency management training. So take that seriously, and if you can make it, that'd be great.
Wait, can you repeat the date of that?
Yeah, it's Monday, March 28th, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the City of Milwaukee.
We will send out an email reminder for you guys as well.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Because some of these things have been mentioned once, and then they disappear. And if we could have like some reminders, or maybe something on the Friday highlights, or something just listing the dates, that'd be so great. Thank you.
Because we know Katie doesn't have anything else to do.
Just a few bullet points would be fantastic.
Not a problem. And Library Director Cole with our
Oh, yes.
library update.
I'm here for you.
She stuck it out.
She's got her
Coat on already.
They've turned the lights on.
Yes.
She's got her keys in her hand.
She's already pulled the
Warming up out there right now.
Clock's running, guys.
I would let you feel my cold little hands by sitting in the back, but never
You don't
mind.
have your gloves on.
I didn't bring them. So, good evening, commissioners and Mayor Holliday. It's especially lovely to see you this late hour. Okay.
Okay, we're not going to get the giggles.
Brick.
Come on.
Brick. I want you to see that the brick is going up.
It's lovely.
It's going to change from a blue building to a purple building, that's the insulation, to a brick building.
Yes.
More brick.
Pink.
It's hard to see. That's me
That's the ribbon?
cutting the ribbon to the stairs.
Yay.
The stairs are now installed, and it's fantastic.
And we can walk up the stairs one of these days.
Yeah. So it's looking down the stairs. And then, is that it? I did a film that was a panorama view, but it's not coming up, and I will make sure that you get it in an email so you can view it at your leisure, but it's one whole picture instead of like a bunch of chunky.
Oh, wonderful.
And that's it, the stairs is the new big one.
So I have a quick question for you, since you've been learning all this construction stuff. So when is it okay to go past a red danger tape?
When the construction site manager tells you it's okay.
Wrong answer. Never.
And-
It's never okay to go past red danger tape.
Well, I didn't go
That's why
past
you cut
it.
it.
I
That's
cut
why
it.
you cut it.
But, because I
All
followed
right, moving along.
directions.
We're done.
Oh, now that.
Thank you very much for the
Yeah.
update.
Why did we turn the lights off?
Sorry.
Jeez, is it 11 o'clock?
Mr. Cockle, are you done?
I am done. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Anybody have anything really urgent, you have to say?
I got kind of a cool thing that I wanted to share with you that, Mr. Conkle and I have been working with the CIC quite a bit. This came from the Kenema Neighborhood Association. Their liaison police officer is Jason Paul. Is that correct? No. And it said, this came from them. Dear Officer Paul, today the Kenema Neighborhood Association donated $250 to the Fallen Badge Foundation in honor of your best friend, Seaside Police Sergeant Jason Gooding. And we offer our most heartfelt condolences. The check was deposited. The donation to support Sergeant Gooding's family was assembled through both personal member contributions and the membership-approved CNA treasury. And like I say, this is from Kenema Neighborhood Association in honor of their police officer that supports them in their neighborhood. So
very nice.
Bill did that, and Paul left. He's their Kenema guy. So anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. That's pretty good. So
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? And trying to think, I've done some things over the last couple weeks, but that can all. Yeah, but probably the biggest thing was we did a tour with Senator Merkley and his staff last Saturday at the falls, and that went well. Beyond that, anything I have can wait until next time.
Yeah.
So.